I call to order the regular meeting of the Assembly for the Municipality of Anchorage for March 25th, 2014. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll call?
Mr. Birch.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Trombley. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Johnston.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Traney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Dembowski, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of a mixed report of sports and politics. I had the pleasure last week of spending a day up in Fairbanks at the Arctic Winter Games, where hundreds of Anchorage residents who were competing in the games represented us well, and came back, and over the weekend got to go out to Kincaid Park, our beautiful facility where the National Championship cross-country ski races and the Super Tour finals were held, and got to root Keegan Randall on to her 2 victories, which was just incredible to see. I spent yesterday in Juneau making one last push for our capital program, and it's getting to the time of the session where getting in to see people over the next few weeks will diminish, so this was time to go down and talk with the leadership, and it looks like at least a couple of our projects have got some momentum, including the library here, so it was a good meetings. Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Trombley.
Mr. Mayor, did you have a chance to talk to Representative Stoltz, co-chair of Finance, about our wish list?
No, in fact, Representative Stoltz was too busy to meet. We made the attempt.
Mr. Traney.
Mr. Mayor, did you hear anything about the money for our bus transit center?
Yes, I talked with Senator Myers. They're putting together the capital list in the Senate, and then it goes over to the House. The transit center was one of the ones that we made a top priority. We had to narrow down our list, as you know, because, quite frankly, it's going to be a very skinny capital budget this year. But the library, the transit center, and were 2 of the top priorities that we emphasized with him, and I think there's, again, some momentum for those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And for the chair's report this evening, I would like to let the Assembly members know that last week the clerk's office and the video center were notified that GCI announced the MOA channel was moving from channel 10 to channel 9 effective tonight. And I'd like to share this information with the body, the audience as well. The video center and the clerk's office are trying to work out with GCI and conduct a public education campaign about the change, and we would appreciate you letting your constituents know at your community council meetings. We shared this information with the public as soon as we became aware of it, but there's a lot of people watching Channel 10 tonight that aren't seeing the Assembly meeting unless they make a switch down to Channel 9, and as I said, that had nothing to do with us. So we ask for your patience. With that, we'll begin with Mr. Birch for individual member reports.
I'll just say my follow up on the mayor's comments. My wife and I attended the Arctic Winter Games event in Fairbanks and volunteered through the week. It was a great turnout. They had over 2,000 athletes from basically countries that around the Northland, including Russia and Finland and Greenland. It's just a phenomenal turnout. 2,800 volunteers putting on the events, and just had a spectacular weather and outcome. And Alaska did very good, and we're real proud to see a lot of our young people contending. And I have to say, that biathlon is a great event. We spent a lot of time in the biathlon course. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, since our last meeting, Mr. Honeman and myself had the opportunity to meet in Eagle River with 2 members of the Mat-Su Borough Assembly, which was Mr. Arvin and Mr. Culligan, as well as Mayor DeVilbiss for our joint transportation committee meeting, and Mr. Trainee was also in attendance. The committee was our first meeting. We formed, and Mr. Honeman and Mr. Culligan have been named as the co-chairs of that committee. We will be meeting again June 12th at 11 a.m. at the Eagle River Town Center community room right behind the library. So if anybody would like to attend, it'll be there. Also, recently, the clerk's office, as many of you know, is on Facebook and have been really pushing the Get Out the Vote message on Facebook. I personally liked their picture and made it my profile picture, and I noticed a lot of people picked it up and started doing that. But also, one of my Facebook friends became a person who's working at the polling places because they saw the link. So I would encourage all Assembly members, if you haven't liked the clerk's page yet, do so, because it's amazing how fast the word spreads. So that's just my 2 cents of that. Third point, I just want to point out, Mr. Trombley, you might be happy to know, since you asked the mayor this question, I'm flying to Juneau on Thursday on my own dime, and I will be meeting with Representative Stoltz. As a matter of fact, he's given me the option to work the day in his office and use his space. So I'll use that as an opportunity to put forward the message of Anchorage projects. So hopefully, if there's something you want me to communicate, please let me know. Additionally, this is our favorite part of the evening, Mr. Trainee. I have one disclosure to make. Mr. Chairman, tonight we have item 95 on the agenda, which is a renewal of a maintenance support agreement for AFD's computer-aided dispatch system. I am an Assembly member married to an Anchorage firefighter. In this matter, you may rely on me to act in the public interest. I make the disclosure so that you and the Assembly may rule on my participation.
Ms. Dembowski, as with other items of this nature, I recognize no conflict for you and ask if the body concurs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
You
you're welcome,
will
Mr.
participate.
That's the right man. When we get down to the actual school budget, I'll declare my conflict of interest too. I just do it at the appropriate time.
Mr. Steele.
I have no report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr.
From the Budget Committee, I'm going to make a recommendation tonight that we do two things, that we postpone the acceptance of the capital plan pending the vote in April, which will be April 1st, and that has the ramifications of the bond packages being impacted on that report, as well as I'm going to urge strongly that we have two public hearings on the school budget that's in front of us tonight. So a motion hopefully will come from me for continuation once we open the public hearing, continuation to that topic again through to April 7th. I think from the budget perspective, we're slightly ahead of schedule, and the idea that perhaps we have some input from the voters on the April 1st election is sense, and there is no big time constraint on that, as long as we urge approval sometime in April on that budget. Thank you.
And I would assume that capital plan is the school district capital plan.
Yeah, correct. I'll pull it later. It's 9E1.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, the AMATS Policy Committee will meet this Thursday at 1:30 p.m. in the Mayor's Conference Room. I would note for the members' information that we'll be releasing the draft TIP, Transportation Improvement Project List, for 2015 through 2018. Now's the time, if you see something that you'd like to have changed, to let me know so that we can work that through as the TIP advances through the public process. And obviously, you shouldn't just let me know. You should make your comments to staff. I'll also take a moment to thank Chief Mew. I don't see him here tonight, but he took the time, despite starting his workday at 6 o'clock that morning, to attend one of my community councils at 7 o'clock that night to introduce some of the new online tools and social media tools that the police department is using to spread information about activity in our community and give more information to residents so they can more effectively track and affect activity in their neighborhood. Some really neat things coming down the pike. I don't know if any of you read the email that came out Friday, but some really neat opportunities for the citizenry to get more information about real time, like within 15 minutes, activity in their neighborhoods and help make a difference. So thanks again to the chief. And then finally, just in response to Mr. Trombley's inquiry, I visited Juneau a couple of weeks ago, and Representative Stoltz and I spent a little time together in his office and a little bit more time together at the Bubble Room. Relived a skit we did together 19 years ago. It kind of hurts to say. But it was a very positive conversation. We hashed out a few differences and hopefully make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Trombley?
As chair of the Ethics and Elections Committee, I had a chance to call Ms. Jones yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and I asked her how the absentees were going, the requests, and she said that we have doubled our requests already over last year, so that 1,000 total requests for absentee ballots last year. They've doubled that, and we're not done yet. So clearly, Ms. Jones, the clerk's office has done something right to increase that turnout, and I appreciate that. And I would also mention, I believe that tomorrow is the last day that you can request an absentee ballot. Am I correct on that? All right. So if you want one, you got to request it by tomorrow, or you can vote early here or at City Hall.
Mr. Gray-Jackson?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might report that the Public Safety Committee meeting met last Wednesday, the 19th. Of course, yourself was in attendance. In fact, the entire committee were there. One of the things that was brought up, we may be looking forward to some changes in the taxi ordinance, or at least some tweaks with how the Transportation Commissioner, Transportation Inspection Office, and Commission will address fare rates, daily fare rates. So stand by. We may see some changes or tweaks, as we know that it was a very large ordinance change, so we may see some coming up. Also, a concern over 8.80, the calls to service in excess of 8 at a residential area. The concern that's still going on with some assisted living homes, particularly those at risk or extreme client contacts, that they walk away and there may be a danger to themselves more than anything else. And they're required by law under one arm to report that the person's missing, but every time if they have multiple tenants, residents there, they're likely to see more than 8 calls in a year's time. So we'll likely be reviewing some of the data and try to get with an objective number and perhaps see some changes in that law coming up. The next Public Safety Committee meeting will be, I know we love to see those. There's 5 Wednesdays in April, so it'll be this Wednesday the 16th, and we likely will have some potential changes, we hope, to conclude the towing ordinance change. I do know that we are long overdue on trying to get that wrapped up. We wanted to make sure the elections went through, so we were taking an at ease, if you will, from the clerk's office support for that. And lastly, I'd ask that those that can join you probably received your letter yourself about the Choose Respect rally, which is Thursday at noon, and invite you to come out and join us. I know several of us have in the past, and we marched to Town Square, and we will be there for a very important moment to reflect upon how we should reduce the amount of sexual assault and domestic violence in our state. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston, I understand that you may be leaving us a little early this evening.
Right, that will be part of my announcements. But first of all, as far as the Enterprise Committee, Mr. Hall, you've agreed to chair the Thursday meeting that's going to be noon to 1 in room 525, and this will be our first port update. And then on April 3rd from noon to 1, we will be having a joint meeting of MLMP Commission and the Enterprise Committee, and it will have a presentation from Chugach Electric as far as some ideas they have as far as an approach to manage the transmission of the rail bill. This is something, as a member of the Mayor's Energy Task Force, I've now seen the presentation twice. I think it's something we need to address as an assembly, and so I hope anybody that's interested, other than Enterprise Committee meeting members, also come. And yes, I apologize. I am leaving this evening. I was hoping to leave tomorrow, but Alaska Municipal League is sending me to Juneau because we're a little bit under assault down there, and they have me booked for 2 solid days. And Miss Mahoney was there last week for the same reason, and we pulled in Mr. Flynn the week before. I just want to bring you all up to date as far as, we passed the resolution supporting the $3 billion infusion as far as the unfunded liability. That is having a hard time getting traction down there. They've talked about having a $3 billion set aside, which would do very little for our problem. And on top of it, they are taking $10 million out of the revenue sharing account, which is there's a process on how we get our revenue sharing, and they're talking about taking $10 million out every year for 5 years and getting completely rid of revenue sharing. And then one other area is, as budgets get tight, and particularly if they don't address the unfunded liability, and I know I've mentioned many times that this year I think it's $660 million the state will be paying for this. Next year it's $740, I think. And within 2 or 3 years it's going to be up to $1 billion for a couple of years, and that's when our revenues are at its worst. So the legislature and their benevolence is saying, well, the municipalities are not stepping up to the plate. And so they're trying to increase our share as far as this unfunded liability. And right now they're just talking of increasing it from 22 to 24%. And Ms. Mahoney, is that $5.6 million for this year if we did this? So all of these discussions are one that will have huge impact on us for the first quarter budget revisions and for many years to come. And if anybody is going to Juneau, I would like, if you could, to spend a little time with either Ms. Mahoney or myself so we can sort of explain why this is important. So as you meet with legislators, you can weigh in and help us on this. Thank you.
Mr. Training.
Just that I appreciate Ms. Dombrowski for her comments earlier on the clerk's page. I was just looking on here. They've now got 342 likes. So let's see how many more we can get for them tonight. If the public out there that's actually watching this, go to the web page and look up the clerk's area and like it, because they're doing a great job getting this message out to the public that we've got election April the 1st. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And share, 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 share.
You got it. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk.
Through the chair, Mr. Trainee, thank you very much. One of the things that we are putting out on the clerk's Facebook page is the link to the agenda, the links to the addendum. And did you know what? It's a lot easier to find from the Facebook page than it is from the navigating through the website, because there's just so much information on the website. So if you're looking for the agendas or the documents, it's real easy to find from the Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at the addendum to the agenda. Mr. Honeman, you have a comment?
I forgot to mention, I know that yourself attended as well. Yesterday we had the graduation for the Anchorage Police Academy for 16 new officers who will be joining the streets, if not already, for their field training. So 16 new additional officers. By summer, we hope that they'll be, all of them will be cut loose and serving our citizens. So a big plus for the Anchorage Police Department. So, and thanks for attending. I know.
Absolutely. That was a classic photograph in the paper this morning of the child pinning the badge on her mom. Ms. Johnston?
I just want to add to that I think, is this the first year that all applicants graduated, which I think is right, and I don't think that has happened before. So this was an exceptional class.
Thank you. We are now at the addendum to the agenda. The chair would take a motion to incorporate.
So moved.
Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, I will read the addendum into the minutes, beginning with 9D15 AM 176, transfer of ownership of a beverage dispensary liquor license number 4694 for Moreland Properties LLC to BDA's that is that item. 9D16 AM 180, the Alaska Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Intervention Product awards victim support service to abused women in crisis in the amount of $85,860.25, Standing Together Against Rape $61,530, and Victims for Justice $40,129 for the Municipality of Anchorage Department of Health and Human Services Public Health Initiatives and Partnership Division. 9D17 AM 181, proprietary purchase to PTP Management Inc. for providing a new boiler and domestic water booster pump for City Hall, retrofitting light fixtures in City Hall's floors 1 through 5, and for the 5th floor payroll division remodel in City Hall through the Municipality of Anchorage Real Estate Department Real Estate Services Division in the amount of $863,700. 9D18, Assembly Memorandum AM 182, proprietary purchase of field turf signature golf screen system for field turf for the Municipality of Anchorage Parks and Recreation in the amount of $472,484.51. 9D19 AM 183, sole source purchase from UTC Mobile View to provide Mobile View on-bus camera systems upgrade for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Transportation Department in the amount of $119,225. 9D20 AM 184, sole source professional service contract with Spiegel and McDermott LLP to provide an expert witness for the Municipality of Anchorage Municipal Light and Power in the amount of $75,000. 9D21 AM 185, Wolfworth, Breck, Cartledge, and Brooking Law Office professional legal services contract relating to ongoing labor and employee disputes in the amount of $30,000. 9F6 AO 47, an ordinance approving a letter of agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the Anchorage Police Department Employees Association regarding acting assignment pay and reducing the 30-day period for public review and comment. This is scheduled for public hearing on 4/8/14, and it's accompanied by AM 177. 9F7 AO 48, an ordinance approving a collective bargaining agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and Teamsters Local 959 and reducing the 30-day period for public review and comment. Public hearing on 4/22/14, and that's accompanied by AM number 178. 9F8 AR 80, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage adopting 2014 Substantial Amendment Number 1, 2013 Substantial Amendment Number 2, 2012 Substantial Amendment Number 3 to Housing and Community Development 2014 Action Plan, 2013 Action Plan, and 2012 Action Plan, respectively, for the Department of Health and Human Services. Public hearing is to be on 4/8/14, and that is accompanied by AM number 179. F9 AO number 49, an ordinance extending the waiver of Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 1.15.025G, restrictions to employment after leaving municipal services for William A. Earnhardt to April 30th, 2014. Public hearing on 4/18/14. And 9F10 AR 81, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $4,623,012 received by the municipality related to the 2006 Alyeska Trans-Alaska Pipeline System litigation. The appropriation to be from various funds as contributions to segregated 2006 TAPS Reserve Fund, or in the alternative, all or part of the amount appropriated is contributed to the MOA Trust Fund 730 endowment. And this is for public hearing on 4/8/14. And we have one laid on the table. It is 9B5. And that is AR 82, and is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly supporting the passage of HR 3786 to direct the Administrator of General Services on behalf of the Archivist of the United States to convey certain federal property located in the state of Alaska to the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska. And that is the addendum. I have one other laid on the table, and that is item 11A, and it is Department of Law. It's a memorandum, and it is from the Department of Law on 0220 addresses to mail an absentee ballot to the voter is not subject to disclosure as a public record supplemental. That's all of the addenda and laid on the table. The chair would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, as a matter of fact, I want you to vote on that. But before we do, I want to ask any items to be pulled this evening, beginning with you, Mr. Birch.
No item, sir.
Ms. Dembowski.
9 Delta 5.
Mr. Starr.
You don't want me?
Mr. Steele.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr.
9 Echo 1 and 9 Foxtrot 4, 4 being to set the public hearing date only.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 9, Alpha 1 for presentation. And item 9, Foxtrot 5. You'll note that we have a very similar item on the addendum, so this one isn't necessary for introduction.
Thank you. Mr. Trombley.
9 Foxtrot 6, set the public hearing date.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman.
On the addendum to the agenda, Mr. Chairman, 9 Delta 20 and 9 Delta 21 for questions.
Ms. Johnston.
9 Alpha 2.
Mr. Trainee.
9F1, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. I show that we have pulled from the consent agenda 9 Alpha 1 and Alpha 2. We have pulled 9 Delta 5, Delta 20, and Delta 21. We have pulled 9 Foxtrot 1, Foxtrot 4, Foxtrot 5, and Foxtrot 6. And we have pulled 9 Echo 1. Did I get everything that was asked to be pulled? Hearing that, I would ask you to vote on the consent agenda unless the items that have been pulled. And I can't push vote, Madam Clerk. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously. We now have before us for public reading 9 Alpha 1 AR number 71.
Mr. Chairman, move to postpone. Bo, do you want to do this now, or do you want to postpone until 6 o'clock, Bo? Do you want to do this now or postpone to 6 o'clock?
Do this now, and then students can speak.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve.
Second.
We got a first and a second. Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, this item is approved.
All right, Mr. Bassett, if you and your cohort would come forward, that'd be great. Thank you. This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly thanking Prudential Jack White Vista Realty, Alaska Salvation Army, UAA TRIO Program, and the Friends of Alaska, PLYI, for their support and partnership with the Alaska Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute and recognizing the 2004 Alaska Points of Light graduates. Whereas the Center for Creative Leadership created the Points of Light Youth Leadership Curriculum in 1996 to encourage and train young Americans to get actively involved in their community. And whereas since the first Alaska PYLI Institute held in 1998, more than 800 Alaskan students from across the state have graduated from the Alaska Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute. And whereas one of the goals of Alaska PYLI is to train diverse middle level and high school students in creative community leadership to serve others and make a positive difference in their school community and a better world for all. And whereas the 17th annual Alaska Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute was sponsored by Jack White Real Estate with partners the Alaska Salvation Army, UAA TRIO, Stellar Be the Change, Jewel Lake Tasty Freeze, YWCA Alaska, Anchorage Elks Lodge, and area schools, and conducted over spring break, March 10 through 14 of this year, at the Salvation Army Anchorage Corps Community Center. And whereas 33 outstanding youth leaders in volunteer service participated in the 40-hour community leadership training that included 5 days of skill development and instruction in self and community assessment, team communication, diversity, goal setting, project planning, decision-making, and service learning activities, and these participants were honored as Alaska's 2014 Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute graduates. And I'm going to apologize in advance here, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple challenging names in here, but I'm going to do my best. This one's easy. Samantha Marie Anaruk from Clark Middle School, Hannah Branch from West Anchorage High School, Brianna Bundick Kelly from Bartlett High School, Jaleesa Baez from East Anchorage High School, Manuel Camarena from Robert Service High School, David Clark from the University of Alaska Anchorage, Ajalon Edwards, East Anchorage High School, Adrian Casey Eugenio from Colony High School, Miranda Evan from West Anchorage High School, Emily Garlock from Stellar Secondary School, Shantina Gillian from West Anchorage High School, Autumn Glansbeek from Begich Middle School, Casey Grundhauser from Stellar Secondary School, Pa Lee Her from Bartlett High School, Tia Her, also from Bartlett High School, wonder if they're siblings, Michelle Hood, East Anchorage High School, Natalie Irvine, West Anchorage High School, Hyun Jang from Bartlett High School, Joshua Johnson from Eagle River High School, Brett Keene from Bartlett High School, Will Manis from Diamond High School, Eli K. Matthews from Stellar Secondary School, Markland William Morgan from Hanshu Middle School, Anwar Mu from East Anchorage High School, Gabriela Palisano from Mears Middle School, Merlin Paul from West Anchorage High School, Sabrina Paul from Romig Middle School, Evelyn Charette Ash from Stellar Secondary School, Matthew David Street from Diamond High School, Megan Titzel from East Anchorage High School, Yi Vang from Bartlett High School, Judy Vu from the University of Alaska Anchorage, and Michaela Wilson from Stellar Secondary School. And whereas the Anchorage Assembly joins in celebrating these distinguished Anchorage students who demonstrate an unwavering dedication to improving the quality of life for all residents and serve as harbingers of a bright future within the municipality of Anchorage, and especially those from West and Romig. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly congratulates the graduates of Alaska's 2014 Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute and applauds Jack White Real Estate, Alaska Salvation Army, UAA TRIO program, and all Friends of Alaska PYLI for their support of Anchorage youth leadership and student volunteerism, passed and approved by this Anchorage Assembly on the 25th day of March, 2014.
Thank you very much.
My compliments, Mr. Flynn. That was very well done. We now have before us item 9A2, AR number 74.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, this item is approved.
This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly remembering and honoring Anchorage firefighter Jeffrey Edward Bayless for his professionalism and service to the community. Whereas on March 7, 2014, Jeffrey Edward Bayless, a husband, a son, a friend, and a member of the Anchorage Fire Department, died in the line of duty during a training event at the Anchorage Fire Department Training Center. And whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless is survived by his wife, his parents, his 3 sisters, his brother, and his granddad, Hal, and whereas he was born on November 8, 1962, and raised in Copper Center, Alaska, and whereas on April 4, 1991, Jeffrey Edward Bayless joined the Anchorage Fire Department as a paramedic and rose to the ranks, earning the rank of captain on August 6, 2001, and then senior captain on May 27, 2005. And whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless was a proud member of the International Association of Firefighters Local 1264, and whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless, a 23-year veteran of the Anchorage Fire Department, worked on the Swiftwater Rescue Team at Fire Station 11, and whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless was awarded many commendations during his service for the Anchorage Fire Department, including the Fire Chief's Commendation, a Unit Citation, the Valoris Unit Award, a Unit Excellence, the IAF 1264 Annual Employee Award, posthumously the Red Heart Award, and whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless was recognized as a real hero by the Red Cross of Alaska for his courageous act during a breathtaking swiftwater rescue of a kayaker trapped against a logjam by the fast-moving waters of Eagle River while using a chainsaw from the rescue watercraft, and whereas friends and colleagues describe Jeffrey Edward Bayless as a quiet, polite man with a big heart who always had a smile on his face, and whereas on Saturday, March 15, 2014, following an honor guard procession from Fire Station 1 to the Egan Center, a remembrance service for Jeffrey Edward Bayless was held with the full honors for death in the line of duty. And whereas Jeffrey Edward Bayless, a.k.a. Senior Captain Jeff Bayless, will be missed by this community and by all his family at the Anchorage Fire Department, now therefore the Anchorage Assembly recognizes and honors Jeffrey Edward Bayless for his professionalism and service to our community, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 25th day of March 2014.
We now have before us item 9, Delta 5, AM number 159, proprietary purchase of TriTech Visa Card software maintenance support for TriTech software systems for the municipality of Anchorage, Anchorage Fire Department, in the amount of $135,632.49.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for one of the chiefs, if they can come forward. Good evening, Chief Bashu.
Good evening.
My question is about the pagers.
Thank you. You can stand in front, too.
You got his back. About the pagers in Eagle River. I recognize that, or I've heard multiple times outside of the station, they're not the most reliable, and it has something to do with the Kinnick repeater. What steps are you guys taking? Are you guys addressing that? How are you addressing that? Are you familiar with it?
Yes. I mean, I'm familiar. We all have pagers. The pagers are our secondary means of contacting our crews. And my understanding is, short of spending millions of dollars, we're not going to see an improvement in the Eagle River just because of the shape of the valley, the geography of the valley. It's very tough to get coverage 100% of the area. It just doesn't exist.
Well, my question is this: if, say, it doesn't work right in downtown Eagle River, there's no plans to boost the signal or to do anything to improve it? I mean, we're not talking Eagle River Valley, we're talking downtown Eagle River.
As far as I know, we have pretty good coverage right in Eagle River. And again, the pagers are
secondary.
They're not our primary means of alerting. If a crew is out of their station, they have to have a portable radio with them. They have to have the portable radio on. They have to be able to hear it.
I appreciate that. I was just curious. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, the other chief,
Okay.
Chief Mew, I noticed this is obviously for the fire department's purchase, but you have some interest in this as well. Is this sort of heading down the road to consolidated dispatch? This would overlap to some of your upcoming system discussions, wouldn't it not?
Well, we certainly are looking at combining CADs, and that's part of the RFP that's being written right now and going out there. I don't know about this particular purchase, though. You better ask the other chief about that. I think this is probably just keeping them going until we get to where we're going, but that's really...
Yeah, I know you're cognizant of that. We had brief conversations about the NG 911 products as well, and this is a vendor that rises to some of those dual capacities, so I thought that's why you were stepping up to the mic, was to sort of...
Well, Ms. Dembowski said the chiefs. Maybe she just meant all the fire chiefs. I didn't know which ones you meant.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Sure.
No one else in the queue, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9D20, AM 184, sole source professional service contract with Spiegel and McDermott LLP to provide an expert witness for the municipality of Anchorage Municipal Light and Power in the amount of $75,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, my question, Mr. Chairman, thank you to, I'm suspecting ML&P, perhaps Ms. Mahoney. The funding showing 2014 operating, is this operating budget money from the ML&P or from the general operating fund?
That's from ML&P operating budget.
Okay. And so, in essence, the necessity for the expert testimony and for better or for worse, it will be affected by the ratepayers, not the general taxpayers.
We're very concerned. It will be a ratepayer that would pay if Chugach gets the large increase in transmission wheeling costs that they're asking for from the RCA.
What is that specific amount? And I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to review this earlier.
It was $1.50 per megawatt hour for wheeling on their transmission facilities. They got an increase last year to $3.49, and now they're wanting to go up over $8 per megawatt hour, which is quite a large increase, and including the transmission facilities from their power plant over at Beluga, that we don't feel like we should pay for that.
Okay, and thank you. And I apologize for not having a moment to look this over earlier, but it's added on the addendum. So thank you, Mr. Miller. I have no further questions.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9D21, AM 185, Wolford, Breck, Cartledge, and Brooking Law Office Professional Legal Services Contract relating to ongoing labor and employment disputes in the amount of $30,000.
Move to approve.
Mr. Honeman?
I pull this out of concern, and I know that Mr. Flynn had originally drawn concern about the dollar amounts when Mr. Earnhardt's contract was brought. And I don't recall the specific amount that was originally asked for under his proposed contract for professional services after he left the municipality. But we're at March 25th, and we're looking at, through April 15th, a total of $75,000. What's a full year salary on an attorney? I'm just curious, from the municipal office, law office, of this caliber, I think.
Fully loaded at around 120 would be my guess.
And so we'll have Mr. Earnhardt's services through this contract through April 15th. Is that correct? Is that how I'm reading it?
That's our plan, yes.
I guess I'm just a little troubled by the fact that, and I'm not sure if it's just the complexity or the specifics, and maybe this is just more feeding it rather than a question, but I don't. We see repeated, particularly in the legal section, we see repeated extensions or come back for amendments on contracts, and I'm not sure if that's something that's really controllable by your office. Does it seem like it's more controllable by your office, or is it something out of your control, why we're seeing amendments?
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, I think there's two examples that may be on your mind. One is the ongoing police litigation case that's currently pending in Superior Court and will conclude this week, in fact, closing arguments tomorrow. That case bumped along because it was quite contentious, and the trial date got moved a year, so there was a lot more extra work that had to go into preparing for trial a second time. In this particular case, you might recall that I suggested we shoot for an open-ended date because I wasn't quite sure how long it would take us to get a second attorney on board, get that person up to speed to handle these matters, nor did I know how much or how intense the negotiations would be that Mr. Earnhardt's responsible for. That said, he's been working virtually full-time on our issues, and that's why the billing has reached the level it's reached. And that's, his billing rate is actually lower than other experienced labor negotiators that we use that are attorneys.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9F1. It is AO number 42, an omnibus ordinance of the Anchorage Municipality Assembly revising Anchorage Municipal Code Title 8 Penal Code by amending and relocating or repealing and replacing certain sections of Title IX.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a work session on this. When I take a look at everything that's covered in this, I'm not comfortable with this just dealing with it at our next meeting. We need to have a work session on this. And the Department of Law, would you check and make sure the state has not preempted us on some of the things that I find in here? If you would, please. For example, looking on page 90 of 120, they've got a fine here for having a switch-threaded gravity knife. The state last year took control of that, preempts us. They made it illegal everywhere in the state of Alaska. So I just want to make sure we don't have something in our law that we're looking at doing that the state's already preempted us from passing legislation relative to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry. Through the chair, Mr. Trainee, the idea with this ordinance was largely to mimic state law so we could charge under Muni Code that is written identical to the state law, but we'll definitely look forward to a work session with the Assembly to walk through those concepts.
I would appreciate, Mr. Ritter, because I know on that one, the state in October of last year, and when effective 1 January, it preempts the city ability to charge in that particular crime. So if you just look at it for me.
Yes, sir, and with the indulgence of the chair, it may be that we might have a work session a little bit off your normal schedule to accommodate the municipal prosecutor who may need to be in court on any given Friday, so we'll try to make that work so that we can have her cases covered so she can be available to you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wheeler, the clerk's office will wait till we hear back from you to schedule the work session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you think we may need to change the public hearing date on that, Mr. Wheeler?
I don't know. I think I'm fine with changing it now if you want to, in anticipation of the work session being a little bit difficult and maybe there being questions. It is a big document, so I'm okay with moving this to a later public hearing date if you'd like.
Why don't we go ahead and do that now? So
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to have it heard on the 15th of April, sir.
Very good. Can't be the 15th, Mr. Trainee.
I'm sorry, then I'm looking at one.
22nd.
22nd.
Second.
22nd.
Second.
Very good. We'll schedule that for public hearing on 4/27/14. Any objection to that? Seeing, hearing none? Thank you. I missed one of my items. We have now before us 9E1. It is the AIM 2014, the Anchorage School District 6-year capital improvement plan, July 1, 2014 through July 30th or June 30th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take up action on this item after 14B on tonight's action. There may be some folks from the school district that would want to hear why we're moving it a little bit. So the idea that we take it up, I don't want to move it into public hearing. So if you can accommodate that, just a normal assembly action on acceptance or referral to a later date would be what my intentions are after 14B.
After 14B. Any objection from the body? Seeing, hearing none, we will address that following 14B. Madam Clerk, don't let me miss that one. We now have before us Foxtrot 9 Foxtrot 4, AO 45, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to modify the allocation between park services and capital improvements in the Eagle River, Chugiak Park and Recreational Service Area mill levy under Anchorage Municipal Code 27.30.090 with no change to the voter approved not to exceed mill rate of 1.00. Public hearing date 4/8/14. Mr. Starr.
I move to introduce.
Second.
Third.
And public hearing date, I'd like to move to the 22nd of April and a referral to the Chugiak Eagle River Parks and Rec Board.
Any objection from the body?
Thank you.
Seeing, hearing none, we will change that one to the 27th? 22nd. We now have before us 9F5, and that is AO number 46, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating funds received by the municipality related to the Alaska Trans-Alaska Pipeline System litigation for placement and full management in the MOA Trust Fund under Anchorage Municipal Code Section 6.50.060, public hearing date 4/8/14.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate no motion on this one. I'd like to replace it with 9F10, which was already introduced.
Very good. We now have before us 9 Foxtrot 6, and that is AO number 47, an ordinance approving a letter of agreement between the municipality of Anchorage and the Anchorage Police Department Employees Association regarding acting assignment pay and reducing the 30-day period of public review and comment.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Trombley.
Need to change the public hearing date. Employee Relations asks that we change the public hearing date to April 22nd, 2014.
Any objection from the body? Seeing, hearing none, we will change that date. Very good. And that completes,
Go ahead, finish.
yes, that completes our consent agenda for this evening. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move to waive the rules and change the order today and take up item 12A, that being Mr. Bassett's
Second.
request.
Any objection from the body? Seeing, hearing none, we will move to item 12A as soon as I get caught up. We now have before us an assembly appearance request by Mr. Bassett. Mr. Bassett?
Thank you very much.
You brought company this time.
Yes.
Good.
There'll be a few more coming.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, Madam Clerk, members of the Assembly, Mr. Mayor, thank you for making arrangements for public recognition for our March 2014 class of the Alaska Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute. January 29th, 1991, George Senior Bush, President of the United States, gave his 1,000 Points of Light speech. We have within our reach the promise of renewed America. We can find meaning and reward by serving some purpose higher than ourselves, a shining purpose, the illumination of 1,000 points of light. It is expressed by all who know the irresistible force of a child's hand, of a friend who stands by you and stays there, a volunteer's generous gesture, an idea that is simply right. The problems before us may be different, but the key to solving them remains the same. It is the individual who steps forward. And the state of our union is the union of each of us, one to the other, the sum of our friendships, marriages, families, and communities. We all have something to give, so if you know how to read, find someone who can't. If you've got a hammer, find a nail. If you're not hungry, not lonely, not in trouble, seek out someone who is. Join the community of conscience, do the hard work of freedom, and that will define the state of our union. The Alaska Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute helps teens in Alaska learn leadership skills and tools to become points of light for volunteer service and leadership in their schools, families, and communities. Since 1998, 17 years before most of those standing before you were born, we have been offering this training to all middle and high school students ages 13 to 18. We have outstanding partners. It's a 40-hour leadership training created by the Center for Creative Leadership. The students before you served 5 days during their spring break. 33 students started the training. 33 students finished the training. They were incredibly diverse from 14 schools, ages 13 to 20. 2 students in 7th grade, 2 University of Alaska students in the Emerging Leaders Program as mentors. We want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Not all could be here tonight, and they've been practicing their public speaking, so we'll let them go one at a time. They'll tell you who they are, their school, and their grade, and then it'll be open to questions.
Hi, my name is Autumn Glansbeek, and I go to Begage Middle School, and I am proud to be here and support the Points of Youth Light. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brett Keene. I'm from Bartlett High School, and I had a great time at Pilot, so I'm also supporting it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela Wilson. I go to Stellar, and I'm in 8th grade.
Don't be bashful.
Hi, my name is Brianna, and I go to Bartlett High School. And I came back for second year as an assistant, and it's a totally different experience than coming as a student like I did last year. I think it was a great experience, and everyone should.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Sharadash, and I go to Stellar Secondary School. And Pilot was awesome. You guys should take it. I'm just saying, like.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Garlock. I'm a 9th grade student at Stellar Secondary School, and Pilot definitely taught me a lot, and I also think everyone should have the opportunity to take it.
Thank you. We're not going to skip any of you, so come on.
Good evening. My name is Hyun. I go by Ben at school. Hyun Jang, that's my last name. I'm a senior and I go to Bartlett High School. And through Pi Life, I learned a lot, and I've definitely matured more through this program.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Manis, and I go to Diamond High School, and Pi Life really taught me a lot about leadership, and it's a great program.
Hi, my name is Miranda Yvonne. I go to West High. I'm a junior, and Pilot is an amazing program. I learned a lot of things and learned a lot of things to help my community, and I recommend other kids doing it as well.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hood. I am in 9th grade. I go to East High School. I learned a lot at Pilot, and I would encourage it to others.
Hi, my name is Samantha Anurag. I'm in 8th grade. I go to Caucus Middle School, and this experience has been really great for me and learning new people.
Thank you. Congratulations to all of you. Mr. Honeman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to congratulate Bo Bassett and the Prudential Youth Leadership Institute, Points of Life Foundation. It was an honor to get a chance to be at the inaugural session of PILI in Anchorage, and I know I've returned a couple of times, and unfortunately I was feeling a little under the weather when you guys were meeting during the spring break, so I give you credit for, instead of sleeping in and taking a little time to give your brains a rest, you were actually probably cramping them a little bit with thinking outside the box and doing youth leadership challenges and processes. So I think that's wonderful that you're able to get up early and get going and spend your week of spring break and learning new skills and challenges. And I do believe our community will be better because of people like yourself. So when you see an opportunity to lead and to fill that void where leadership is needed, please step up, because we need you today, we'll need you tomorrow, and we'll need you in the future for all of us. So I will take a note. I did take a note that 6 of the participants were from Bartlett High. That's an alma mater, myself. Also, east side of town represented by 15 of the participants, and so I'm really pleased to see that so much participation from East Anchorage. Thank you.
You'll notice Mr. Honeman always keeps score. Thank you, guys. You did a great job.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the order of the day, and take up item 12B.
Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, we have a request by Mr. William Marsh. Are you here, Mr. Marsh? Please.
My name is William Marsh. I want to thank you all for hearing me one more time on this issue. Hopefully you got the handout I sent. As you can see indicated, I live next door to the park, Uri Park, and it was up for a 40-year land use disposal. Because this park was also part of a rezoning, we had a possibility of having dialogue at our community council and with planning and zoning, where they found enough problems with this 40-year land lease that should have been a rubber stamp park rezone became quite a bit of an issue. I think that our policy for disposal of park, this would have been all of my natural life and then some. We should have a more open method of disposing of parkland that involves the community at the start, not at the end. And I think everybody, including the Lions Club, felt poorly used by the process. Their work is important, and everyone in the neighborhood was eventually forced to take sides against differing points of view without ever having an opportunity to solve the problem locally. When it comes before the community council or comes before the assembly, everyone's left with trying to cut the baby in half, and I don't see that either venue is a good source of solving the problems. Everybody has an agenda at that point, and they have to move on. I think everything else was stated in my letter. If you have any questions, that was just my point.
Okay. Thank you. We have no questions. At this time, I'd ask if there is anybody in the body that was appointed to a board or a commission in our consent agenda this evening. If there is, I'd like to have you come up and introduce yourself so we can express to you our appreciation for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tiffany Hall. I am going to be appointed to the Women's Commission. I was born and raised in Anchorage on the east side, graduated from Bartlett. I lived out for 12 years, and I just moved back 2 years ago for my job at Providence Alaska Foundation, raising money for the hospital. I volunteer with United Way, Pride Foundation, YWCA, and Girls on the Run, and I'm in this year's cohort of Leadership Anchorage. I am here because I think it's my duty to serve others and to give back to my community, and because I don't know that much about how local government works, and I thought this might be a fun way to learn more. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks all of you for this opportunity.
Okay, we've got a couple of comments. Before I recognize Mr. Horniman, though, you'll pick up her last name is Hall. Hall?
Yes.
She may have been Bartlett, but yes. Okay. Mr. Horniman.
Do you have a disclosure?
Ms. Hall, you have been appointed. You were confirmed through we just wanted to make sure you had a chance to opportunity stuff. So congratulations, and thank you for being willing to step up. It is a fun commission, and it's a hugely important commission for all of Anchorage and our citizens. So I hope you do enjoy your service and time with the Women's Commission, and also learning more about our local government, because it is fun, and we need you. So thank you so much. And I think you and I spoke once before. Am I correct? You went to school
At the Scenic Park Fix-It project, we re-met, but yeah, I went to school with Sean.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Trainee.
Tiffany, thank you very much for serving on this commission. There was a time period where they would think about this one just winking out of existence because we couldn't get anybody to volunteer for it. So thank you very much. If you can find anybody else, direct them to the mayor's office and get names put in. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Johnston.
I look forward to our discussions after you've gone to some commission meetings. I have the privilege of being one of her mentors with Leadership Anchorage, so we're very lucky to have her.
Thank you. We appreciate your willingness to serve. Do we have any students here this evening that would like to come up and introduce themselves? I know you're there. I saw names being signed here, so.
Even if they don't like this.
Yep. Come on up.
Miss Tristan, lead the crowd.
Yes.
I know all your names.
Be bold.
My name is Tristan Hall. I'm a senior at Chugiak High, as well as all my fellow Mustangs over there in the back corner. Yeah, you guys can come down.
Come on down.
Join me.
Yeah, there's no getting out of this, so come on up.
If you're a student here for government.
We have security, and I will send them to get you.
Class speaker, and I'll let him talk.
I'm Brandon Coleman, as well, senior at Chugiak High School.
Thanks for coming.
I'm Elijah McKenzie, as well as a senior at Chugiak High School.
Thank you.
I'm Seth Finhouse, and I'm also a senior at Chugiak High.
I'm Nicole Reed, same as them.
I'm Zach Bensel, Chugach High School.
I'm Travis Gaston, and I'm a senior at Chugach High School.
My name is Richard Burrows, and I'm a senior at Chugach High School.
We must have the whole student body here. Come on up.
Hi again, I'm Gabby. I'm from Diamond. I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah Jack, and I'm from Diamond High School.
I'm Isaac Fisher. I'm a senior at Diamond High School.
I'm Brian Valletta. I'm a senior at Service High School.
I'm Lizzie Bishop. I'm a senior at Diamond High School.
I'm Emily Goodrow. I'm a senior at Diamond High School.
I'm Caleb DeVoe. I'm a senior at Chugach High School.
Well, thank you all for being here. And Mr. Trombley? No. Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Honeman, I kept score. We had 10, so we win. Go Stangs. Thank you for coming.
Well,
It's not quantity.
And Mr. Honeman?
I will say that I will cede the fact that Chugach High School packed the crowd tonight. I give you credit for that, and thank you for doing that. But I also noticed that there's a very intelligent young man amongst the group wearing the Miami Dolphins hat. The only undefeated sports team in professional sports ever.
Thank you, guys. Now, we're going to check. There will be a roll call a little later, so don't think you're going to sneak out during our break that we're fixing to take. Take your seats and wait for us to return. Thank you. And we are going to take a short break. Back to order. And I think we're squared away at this point, aren't we, Madam Clerk? We got one item to pick up later in the agenda. Yes. You've got it.
I'll make it. It's fine.
Okay. You want to do that now, Mr.
Sure. I'd like to make a correction. We were informed that today, previously I had mentioned that tomorrow's the last day to request an absentee ballot, but actually today is the final day. So being that it's after 5 o'clock, if you didn't request your absentee ballot and you want to vote early, you can still do that. But as far as requesting an absentee ballot, that opportunity is passed.
We now have before us item 11A, AO number 38, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, section 28.60.050, voting absentee by mail to allow public disclosure of absentee mailing addresses. This item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I have provided our Vice Chairman a copy of the current Municipality of Anchorage absentee by mail application, delineating that there is no indication of confidentiality or expectation of confidentiality in that document. And if you could just have that passed out. I think the discussion that we've had before, this basically restores to the way it's been since the municipality was formed in the mid-'70s, the provision and the public expectation and public access to the absentee mail address. And that's basically the short and sweet. As you can see, it simply makes a one-line modification to the existing code. Thank you.
Mr. Trainee?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote against this. I talked to people that work at the Wake Center, and they're very concerned because there are cases where women go there to hide from an abusive husband, and they're worried that an abusive husband so dedicated to finding them will get their address and go there and accost them at the Wake Center. And so they asked me to please vote against this. I intend to honor that. What we can do is, if this fails, then we're going to take it up after the election and change the form so that you'll have a block to check yes or no, do you want the information released. That way we let the public know ahead of time their information is going to be released. Not in the middle of the election, sir. We don't do it at that time. I'll be a no vote, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I actually have Assembly Council working on an amendment for me right now and to do exactly what Mr. Trainee asked for, to give the option for confidentiality. And my intent was to move that floor amendment and also make the effective date after the election. So I think it would address both of your concerns, Mr. Trainee. But I would request that the body, I make a motion to change the order of the day and take this up under after item 14K, so Assembly Council has a chance to finish what she's doing.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing here and none, we will reorder the agenda and take this item up after 14K. Mr. Starr, I still have you in the queue.
No, that's okay, but prior to 13A, just let me speak if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, I'd like a point of personal privilege.
Yes, sir.
There's members of the audience who are here to, while the mayor's veto isn't an item that is open for public testimony, there has been discussion as whether or not we're going to take it up tonight. As everybody knows, Ms. Johnson had to leave early. Now, the item did pass 9-2, but since that item's passed, there's been rumors that there's individuals on the body who would rather play politics with this item as opposed to actually doing what's right, and that's what the community wants. And so being that Ms. Johnston isn't here, I would prefer that she be here to actually cast her vote. And so I would like to take up, I don't know if we have to schedule a special meeting after the election, being that there's some members who would rather take this up after the election. I don't know if we have to schedule that special meeting now for April 2nd or 3rd or whatever the case may be, but my intention now that Ms. Johnson's gone is to take this item up after the election on April 1st.
Okay. The chair will, Madam Clerk. Oh, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may address Mr. Trombley. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Trombley, thank you for your comments. I'm a little offended by your comments regarding some of us playing politics, because I think everybody in this community knows me, that I represent the interests of everyone, okay? And frankly, I would like nothing better than to override the mayor's veto, especially when I know that he's wrong, simply wrong, especially on this one. But we got a recent letter from the Parks and Rec Commission, and they asked us if they can have an opportunity to review this before we discuss overriding it. And I heard that they've already had an opportunity to review, but they're a volunteer, and I wanted to offer them that opportunity. So I'm really, really glad that you're willing to postpone this action to a later date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I'm going to move on. Mr. Trombley had a point of personal privilege. We have nothing on the floor to discuss. So with that, I'm going to move to item 13A. And Mr. Starr, you had asked for a personal privilege to speak prior to me opening this.
Well, as I alerted the clerk's office, last meeting we submitted almost mirroring legislation to the title, although it's vastly different. This item actually was submitted by Ms. Osiander back in the day, so it's my intention. We have a requirement to open the public hearing, but I will move for immediate postponement indefinitely on this one, and then the other item that's in the system for the topic will come back in May, as we've already discussed. So no alarm. This isn't anything that has to be acted on tonight. It will be postponed indefinitely.
Perfect. I appreciate your sharing that prior to the introduction. We now have before us item 13A, AO number 60, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to amend Anchorage Municipal Code and the zoning map of the municipality of Anchorage by enacting a new chapter under Title 21, establishing the Eklutna Village Overlay District. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body. Mr. Starr?
Yeah, I move to postpone indefinitely this item.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, this item is postponed indefinitely. We now have before us item 14A. It is AM number 19. Oh, 13B. Turn my page too quick. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We now have before us item 13B, It is AO number 12, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 28.20.010 to require 2/3 majority vote to change the date of a regular municipal election. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trainee?
move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
We have a motion to postpone indefinitely. Any objection from the body? Seeing, hearing none, that item is postponed indefinitely. We now have before us item 14A, AM number 119, and this is the Employee Relations Board appointment for William J. Evans. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Items before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the administration, would it cause any particular consternation if we postpone this one for one meeting, given the individual questions on the municipal ballot?
That'd be fine.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I've moved to postpone this to our meeting on April 8th.
Second. Any objection? Seeing, hearing none for the body, this item will be postponed to the meeting of April the 8th. We now have before us item 14B, AO number 33, an ordinance determining and approving the total amount of the annual operating budget of the Anchorage School District for its fiscal year 2014 through 2015, and determining and appropriating the portion of the Assembly approved budget amount to be made available from local sources. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Moment of personal privilege.
Yes, sir.
I have to declare my wife as a teacher. I'm happy she is. She's worked there 13 years, and she is a school teacher.
And
she makes it significant in this budget. Thank you. Not to us, but to her.
And Mr. Trainee, and
time, and I heard about it at home.
And keeping with tradition, and I want to point out to you, when Ms. Dembowski does this, she gives me a script. Next
you don't
time,
need to scream.
next
You're
time,
fast enough, Mr. Chairman.
I find no conflict, and I would ask if the body concurs. Seeing, hearing none, you will participate, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Hall. My name is Ed Graff, the Superintendent of the Anchorage School District. I just want to thank the Assembly for their consideration of the school district's budget for the 14-15 school year. I also want to acknowledge my appreciation for the meeting that we had last Friday. I know that there were a lot of questions that were asked, and I sent out follow-up responses to those questions today, and I'm available to answer any other additional questions you might have at this time.
Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Graff, was one of your follow-ups, I'm sorry, I didn't see it in my email, was one of your follow-ups the 6-year fiscal plan?
No, what we, through the chair, Ms. Dembowski, what we did at the Joint Assembly meeting is we provided some appendice documents, and within those documents was an illustrative 6-year kind of plan that we used as part of our budget and audit discussion this year in developing our budget, but we did not have any further documents to submit beyond that.
Personally, Mr. Graff, I saw the appendices and I found them lacking. I don't consider that's not a 6-year fiscal plan in my mind. But secondly, a follow-up, was part of your email, did it address the pre-K? Did you get a number for me?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember it off the top of your head?
The dollar amount or the number of
Number of
preschools?
classes.
We have 11 different preschool locations.
11, and the approximate cost for each is still around 120?
150,000, I think, is what we identified.
150. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Burt.
Yeah, I was unable to attend a work session last meeting, but over the years we've discussed the potential cost savings within the school district. I know we've talked extensively about contracting out, for instance, snow removal. There's other districts in the state that have saved millions of dollars. Mat-Su most recently comes to mind. And it strikes me that there's an opportunity to save, $6 to $7 million a year by contracting out non-core services. That would be building maintenance, custodials, those type of things. Has there been any initiative on your part or the part of the board to look at actually contracting out non-core services so you can preserve, $6 or $7 million to go into the classroom, into the classroom in a manner that actually benefits the teachers and the people that need to be with the students?
Through the chair, Mr. Birch, one of the things that we have identified as a priority this past year was our operational efficiency. It's one of our goals for our Destination 2020. We do currently have contract out our snow plowing in the Anchorage School District for a handful of our schools, and we're evaluating that right now. So we have taken steps in that direction. We are also looking at potential opportunities in other areas as well. And if Mr. Abbott, our Chief Support Staff Officer, would like to speak to any additional considerations that we're looking at for the future, but that's the one that I am aware of right now that we've been successful in finding great value in, and that's the snow plowing contract that we have in place.
Well, I for one, really struggle with the idea, and knowing that the Mat-Su School District had saved, several $1 million a year, and they're, a third the size of the Anchorage School District, and when we start laying off teachers, when you have an opportunity to contract for snow plowing, as is done, most commercial enterprises in town, and contract for custodial, as most commercial enterprises in town do. It just seems to me like that opportunity was never really properly evaluated. And obviously you haven't been there long enough, but the board has been there. And I just, it's a frustration I have, because I think that is a core competency and requirement of the school district is teachers in the classroom. And when you cut them, or you cut the teachers in the classroom as opposed to dealing with other areas that you can have the cost savings.
And I'd be glad to comment. Our whole snow removal budget is less than the $3 million you're suggesting that the Mat-Su saves. So even if it went to zero, which obviously it would not, we wouldn't save anywhere close to that. We do have in-house custodial staff, as does the Mat-Su. They went to contracted custodial staff, and then they reversed their course a few years later. And for a variety of reasons, they went back to in-house staff on that. We also rely on in-house staff for our custodial support. So we outsource about $20 million worth of support service work right now, primarily in student transportation and in facility maintenance. We'll continue to look for opportunities where it can be done less expensively with the same or better service than what we're getting from our in-house operation. But we're currently, I think it's between 18 and 21 million right now that we're outsourcing in the support services area at this time.
Well, I would just identify that as an area for improvement.
Couldn't agree more. And the same thing with consolidation with municipal services, which we're continuing to evaluate on an ongoing basis as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, I don't know if it's you or Mr. Graff that I would have to ask of it. And I'm thankful that you actually addressed the amount of money, and I'm not sure the specifics of the contracts, but you mentioned a few already. Have you noticed from the services that you have contracted out, were they being done previously by the school district's staff? Some of these services, I know, like snow removal had, but
snow removal had. At one point, all of the district's transportation, the district has done student transportation all in-house, all contracted, and now we have a blend. We currently contract for about $12 or $13 million worth of transportation service and provide the remainder with in-house staff. So we've done it both ways, and we enjoy the model that we're using now, where We have transportation provided about 2/3 contractor, 1/3 in-house. And that's the significant amount of service for us. On the custodial side, I'm not aware that the district has ever used contracted custodial in district-owned facilities. We use contracted custodial in our leased facilities in a couple of cases. The district's education center is a good example of that. Those are provided by our landlord. In terms of facility maintenance, we currently do, as the superintendent alluded to, about 10 or 15% of our snow removal with a contractor. In a heavy snow year, the contractor is more expensive. In a light snow year, the contractor is less expensive. And so we believe on net that for the schools that we've identified right now, we're saving money over a multi-year period. That'll be less expensive. And as the superintendent mentioned, we'll be evaluating the possibility of either expanding that or keeping it the same or potentially reducing it as well. We also do somewhere between $2 and $4 million of outsourced facility maintenance right now, usually specialty services. Some of the either projects that are larger than what our in-house staff is capable of doing or require specialty trade skills that our staff doesn't possess.
So, and I guess the specifics more to the question is there been enough data to look and see, are you really seeing the savings? Now, I hear you say over a multiple year period, if you average it out, it might be that you're seeing some savings. But my experience is, I remember my mother working at purchasing for the military, and when there was a mandate to contract out, they might have saved on the first year or even the second, but after that, it actually ballooned up higher. There was more costs. And about the only thing they saved really is personnel in the long haul, perhaps either benefits or a retirement plan, but beyond that, everything else was more costly. So.
And we're consistently trying to evaluate that and trying to make good choices and to be good stewards of both our schools and our facilities and our students and their functionality and their safety, as well as good stewards of public dollars as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I just like to see some objective data because, I mean, it sounds good to say contract it out, it's cheaper if you do it in the private sector, but I don't find that to be the exact answer on every case. So I look forward to some good objective data. Thank you.
Mr. Trombley, Mr. Abbott, stay with us.
Sure. And you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. At our work session that we had on Friday, when we discussed the Assembly, for example, the cost of the SROs, now the Assembly did decide to pay for 3 months of those SROs. And if the discussion is, if I remember correctly, that money wasn't actually used to reinstate teachers. It was used on a specific program. Now, I've gotten a lot of emails about the Assembly, what we can do as far as reinstating teachers, and there's not really anything that we can do other than freeing up some of that SRO dollars, which we did do. But maybe you could explain to the public as to why you decided not to keep teachers, but to start up a new program.
Certainly. Through the chair, Mr. Trombley, the discussion took place several months prior to the actual Assembly taking action and allowing us to not have to pay for 3 months of SRO services. And really the conversation was about how would we use those funds in a manner that would be directly supporting our goals or the needs of our students. And at that time, we had discussion about ASD iSchool, which is an online support program that we provide for students who need additional credits, perhaps, or need opportunities outside the school day to further their graduation requirements. And so the decision was made to take a portion of those funds and apply that to ASD iSchool, which we could offer for students over the course of the summer because our current allocation of funds consists over the regular school year. And with the reduction of revenue, we don't have the money to provide summer school anymore. So we made the decision to offer that for ASD iSchool, and the remaining portion of those funds are going to go to our elementary division so that they can provide learning opportunity interventions for students, because again, we do not have the resources to provide summer school for those students who might be deficient. So the funds will be dedicated to providing classroom teachers additional money to offer tutoring after school or activities after school to address those deficiencies of students.
So there's no guarantee that we can give the public, from an assembly standpoint, to the public that says, we'll carry the full burden of the SRO cost because we know that teachers will be rehired or that they won't have to be laid off. That's a complete decision that you guys are going to make. There's no guarantee that we can. Is there a guarantee that we can get from you that says, if you do this, then we will
I think
rehire teachers?
Excuse me, through the chair, Mr. Tremblay, I think we, the administration, are certainly willing to have that conversation about not having to pay the full cost of our school resource officers and then how those funds can be utilized. I think I'm definitely open to that. What we've done at this point with the funds that we were, again, given the flexibility to utilize, we focused on those intervention needs for students. We've committed those funds for ASDI school and have plans to do that for our elementary division. But I would welcome a discussion about freeing up those dollars for other opportunities directly to support the classroom.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Abbott, I was digging through your guys' budget. And your current custodial budget, your preliminary budget, is basically $17.6 million for custodial, if I'm reading that correctly. There was a discussion about contracting out, and some services have been contracted out. Have you ever looked at what would we be paying had we not contracted those out? Those other services, I mean, have we dropped 5%, increased 5%? Because that would be a good metric to say we should continue down this process because clearly we're saving money, or no, we're not going to do it, we're going to bring it in-house because it's actually raising our cost.
Correct. The district has evaluated outsourcing the custodial function several times in my lifetime, in the last 10 or 15 years. The most recent evaluation indicated that there would be approximately a 5 to 10% savings associated with that. Unfortunately, the service level would change as well. In addition to providing cleaning functions, which is clearly the majority of what the custodians are doing, they're also providing the facility security and the, for want of a better term, district presence in schools after school hours. That's a function that, in general, the contractors would not include in their custodial rates. So we could probably clean the buildings for less than what we get now, but we would have to determine some way to identify how to ensure an appropriate amount of building supervision during the non-district uses of the buildings that take place in the afternoons and evenings and weekends when we rely on our custodians to be the, for want of a better term, the building monitors. So that's the gap that exists right now between what we get with in-house staff versus what we could get from contracted custodial. And in the two historic reviews that I'm aware of, the district ultimately decided not to move forward with contracting and instead stay with the in-house model because of the service the greater service provided.
Cost-benefit ratio was higher, keeping it in-house?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That helps. Thank you very much, Mr. Abbott.
Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Graff, I need to go back. I've pulled up your email that you sent since we last spoke, and it says here that there's a total of 43 pre-K classrooms, and I thought you had told me there was 11.
Through the chair, Ms. Dembowski, we have 11 general education preschool classrooms. We have 43 special education preschool classrooms, which fall under, I guess, in general terms, a different category. That's for students who are on individualized education plans. So that funding comes from a federal grant to support those students. So I didn't want to misrepresent that we had all of those other preschool opportunities when they were really structured by the individual education plans through special education.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
I believe it speaks to that to some degree in the email as well.
Mr. Flynn?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the dialogue, and just a gentle reminder of Mr. Frank Reed's admonishment to me when I was first running for the assembly, we get to approve the school district budget number, but we don't get to meddle in their budget itself. But still good to get these questions answered. Mr. Graff, I've received a couple of calls from parents of charter school students, and I guess there's been some dialogue between the charter school community and the administration on how local contributions track proportionately to those programs. Could you give us an update on that discussion, where you see that headed?
Sure, through the chair. Mr. Flynn, we've had 2 formal discussions recently with charter school representatives, including the APC president, board representatives, and then the principals themselves. My intent behind those meetings was to really reestablish what our relationship is with our charter schools. Charter schools have been in the Anchorage School District for more than a decade, and I think since that first initial charter school and the transitions that we've had in superintendents and staff and APCs over the years, there's been a slight of a disconnect. And my goal is to reaffirm the importance and value that we have in charter schools. They are, in fact, our students. They're our teachers. In many cases, they're our principals because they have tenure with the Anchorage School District. And they're obviously our parents who live in our community. So we started with that premise that we are the Anchorage School District and we want to support each other. Now, I can't speak to all the past practice that has occurred in the relationships with charter schools because I've not been in that position, but I can certainly acknowledge some of the concerns that have been mentioned, and we're working to try and address those. In the past 2 meetings, we've had conversations about how the indirect rate is charged to charter schools, and so we're working on that, as well as the facility costs associated with managing a charter school. And that's where we've left that discussion. Since then, I believe there's been follow-up meetings with Mr. Abbott and Mr. Foster to discuss some different concepts and proposals that they are presenting on their own individual behalf of the administration. But we're still anticipating more discussions to take place in the next couple of weeks, and certainly be briefing the board and looking forward to how we can come closer together on our support of each other for our students and for our community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Training.
Thank you for being here, Superintendent. I appreciate the email we got today. This is basically our city is charging our school district $2,973,000 in change. And I appreciate that. And, you know, the problem is right now we are charging you guys, the school district, to have our police officers in your building. They are not safety security. They are sworn police officers. They function the same way as the 16 officers we had sworn in yesterday do. So I appreciate you coming here because all we do is we set the total dollar amount. We are not a super school board. We cannot add programs in or take programs away. That's up to you guys. But we're going to take a look at your budget tonight. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Steele.
Mr. Graff, I just want to commend you on the effort that you went to this summer with regards to, or this past year with regards to developing the budget. You and the school board and everybody concerned, the meetings that you had out in the community, listening to people prior to the development of the budget, and trying to literally get a handle on this reduction in funding that has taken place due to the cost of living increase. You guys have done a wonderful job from my point of view, and I certainly appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Mr. Starr.
Well, again, it's my intention to perhaps expand the dialogue to perhaps a greater public. And my disclosures, of course, I'm running for re-election, and so some of my conversations, quite bluntly, are tempered because I don't want to irritate anybody, including my normal style of walking into my own school. But, Mr. Graff, when I walk into my local school and I hear from 2 of my elementary principals that I'm losing 2 teachers inside my elementary schools, I'm challenged by that. When I drive the Boniface building and see the admin building and you can't find a place to park, I'm going, can't we just take a couple of those people and put them in the classroom? That's my first thought, and I get angry with that. And so my reasoning for slowing us down as budget chair is to make a recommendation that we take our time deliberative with that. Ms. Johnson left to go down to AML. There's also talk about another topic I want to bring up to you is the increase in the TERS contribution rates and the potential impact on the cost to the teachers' pension costing that comes into your budget and how we could address that. I want to start out by calling a conversation as a work session. Right after you spoke, Mr. Griffin got up and he tendered his chair of our budget advisory commission, and he put up a fourth grade reading level that startled me. And I saw you look at that slide as well, and he indicated that our fourth grade reading level is the worst in the country. Do you know what he was talking about?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I believe what you're referencing is the NAEP scores, which are representative of the state of Alaska. It's a random sample. And so I wouldn't characterize it as being Anchorage. I would characterize that as the state of Alaska. Okay.
What is the reading scores in comparison for fourth grade for the rest of the country? Do you have that data?
We, Mr. Starr, we are unable to compare ourselves as a district to the rest of the state because we do not have the same standards, nor do we have the same assessment available across the nation.
So comparative to somebody, say, in Florida, how are our kids doing? Do you know? I mean, this is where we're after sort of the public is asking me how my kid's doing in comparison to others. And so what do I tell them? Do you have the fourth grade reading level in comparison to somebody in Florida?
What I can share with you, having worked with a former superintendent who was from Florida, that in Florida they adopted legislation that essentially retained all students in third grade who were not proficient. And then the following year, they found that all of their fourth grade scores were extremely high. And I think what I understand to be the case is that if you weren't proficient, you couldn't pass. And only the students who went on to fourth grade and took the fourth grade reading test were the ones who were identified in the assessment. And of course, those scores were proficient and above. But outside of that, I don't have any other additional information regarding Florida scores compared to
or Illinois scores or Minnesota scores. We can't compare our schools to the rest of the country?
Unfortunately, we can't. I think part of the consideration around having unified standards was that there would be a common assessment that could be developed as well, and you would have that ability to compare nationally with other districts in other states. So the only assessment we have now is the NAEP, and that is a random sample throughout the state. It does not individually tell you what a district has done, doesn't give you those cumulative results, and so it's not 100% representative of the Anchorage School District compared to other districts. And again, when you compare it to other districts or other states, you can't dial it down to the individual
You
student.
can't go to the grade level and do that. Okay. Well, I wish we could, perhaps, so that we could have a little better answer for our parents, either the transit in, transit out, and how do you benchmark it?
I agree. That was something that we were potentially really excited about because we have such a mobile population in Anchorage and as well as in our state.
The TERS contribution rate is potentially going to be changed in terms of trying to bridge the gap on the unfunded liabilities for our retirement programs. Have you had information or have you lobbied to Juneau to find out what they're talking about in terms of the school district budget?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I recently was down in Juneau and I did not have individuals bring that information up to me. However, I had two other superintendents joining me and they referenced the possibility of that. And I think at this point, there's been no final decision made, but the reference was to increase adjusting the TERS to be equal to what the PERS amount is, 12.5% to 20%. But there's been no formal discussion, at least that I was a part of, around that.
Well, again, probably a better question for Mr. Foster, but I'd like to do that at our next meeting perhaps. But, if we set the upper limit and we go ahead and sort of approve the tax basis, we're either going to come back and correct, or, in fact, if we collect taxes and your costs go up because your contribution rates went up, ours is proposed to go up $5.5 million, how would we pay that obligation due?
Mr. Starr, We would, at this point, if there were a change to any funding allocation that we receive from the state, we would have to come back to the Assembly for upper limit approval. We did not factor in any of the potential increase that was in the governor's proposed budget or his proposed omnibus bill. Yeah. So that is something that would have to be considered, and at this point we've not evaluated to what degree that change would look like.
Well, the HB 62...
And Mr. Charr, just to emphasize, the conversations in Juneau that we're aware of would offset any increase in the employer liability with a commensurate increase in funding that would come to the district as well. So there's all the conversations we've heard from Finance Committee members and others indicate that it would be a net zero to school districts generally. It would just be a way to change the way that the payments in lieu of are accomplished currently. So our expectation would be that if there is a change in either PERS or TERS employer contribution rates, that would be offset by an equal or close to equal amount of additional revenue as well.
I guess, and not to debate, but on top of your expectation that the BSA perhaps would be corrected as well? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, and we've received questions to that effect from legislators. How much additional BSA would you need if the TERS went from 12.5 to 22 to equal what the PERS contribution is? How much additional BSA would you need if PERS went from 22 to 24?
Right.
All of those questions have been asked, and I know they've been asked not just of us, but of the Department of Education to answer those somewhat globally on behalf of many districts, because the answer is not the same for every school district. We all have different employee makeups, and so one district might need a BSA increase of $200 to cover the TERS change. Another might need $230. Another might need less. So it's a moving target. I think that's one of the complications the legislature is somewhat frustrated with as they explore the possibility of adjusting the employer contribution.
Yeah, well, every municipality has also got a different level that they can contribute.
Yeah,
we're already at our top, so
yeah, all the PERS employers have the same challenge.
Yeah. Well, the other question, which was Mr. Trainee alluded that we can't really, sort of mess with what internally happens. Mr. Flynn alluded to it as well, but we seem to still have the dialogue about shifting the SROs, and I was again startled to follow up on Mr. Trombley's answer that if we in fact were able to come up with a reimbursement or a retraction of that and your dollars stayed the same but your costs went down because we assumed them or didn't send you a bill, however you want to talk about the SROs, but you wouldn't immediately have the priority to replace teachers to the classroom. And you do have a school board, you have policymakers as well, but I've always approached our budgets as a partnership, and to not be able to have some sort of public speak to that topic, I have to go away knowing that we're going to either continue this conversation or have some assurances that our priorities align with yours. Are you going to be able to replace teachers if we can come up with some additional costings?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. What I had hoped to say was that we have committed those funds that we currently have from our SRO to supporting our ASDI school so we can provide summer school for students this year. However, if there is a consideration from the Assembly or an opportunity presented by the Assembly to increase those funds from our school resource officers back to the district, then the administration would certainly be supportive of recommending to this full board's consideration putting those resources to the highest value, such as direct classroom instructional opportunities.
It's a slightly different answer than Friday, so I guess we're getting the message through. It seems that that's not what I heard at the work session on Friday, so I either misheard or you said it differently tonight. So that's all. But again, my intention is to sort of continue the public hearing to the 8th. Thank you.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate Mr. Trombley and Mr. Starr's conversation about hiring teachers with SRO money, because that's what they were alluding to. But first, I just want to say thank you for this budget, because I really believe that you did the best you could with a $23 million shortfall. I really believe that. And I want to thank you for the email that you sent us this afternoon. And the school resource officer's dollar amount that you're still paying to the municipality is $2.3 million. So how many teachers positions could you reinstate with $2.3 million?
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, with the $2.3 million, we would roughly be looking at 21 teachers, 22 teachers possibly.
That's a nice number. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all?
Howdy. For the record, I'm Bob Griffin, the chairman of the Anchorage School District and Combined Municipality Budget Advisory Commissions. And I was just take some time to reiterate some of the things we said at the Friday work sessions and some of the findings and recommendations that have come from my commission, or that were approved by my commission during this budget cycle. The current budget concerns the Anchorage School District, and our assessment has a lot more to do with the prioritization problems of the school board than it has to do with the generosity of taxpayers at any level. The district has identified employee benefits as the salient cost driver leading to the current budget deficits. That assessment conveniently overlooks the fact that those employee benefits are actually negotiated items that were approved by the school board. Also missing from that analysis is that the district has seen a significant decline in labor productivity over the last decade or so. The Anchorage School District is down 2,000 students since the peak in 2003, yet the district still employs 200 more FTE employees than they had during that time frame. Of the 14 recommendations, I'll cover the two most important that the BAC has recommended to the school board, that we further reinforce our very effective and efficient charter schools that tend to get less support still, and it seems like the school district is moving in that direction. And also that we much more aggressively look at repurposing excess elementary floor space to accommodate charter schools. Well, the ASD has seen a decline in neighborhood school enrollment in elementary schools of about 4,600 students in the last 20 years. We've also seen a rapid expansion of about 750,000 square feet of new elementary floor space. Just for some context, the student enrollment decline is equivalent to losing all the kids in the 9 Southwest Anchorage attendance elementary schools, while the floor space addition is equivalent to the 26 campuses of Aquarian Charter School. Bottom line, the Commission estimates that by repurposing 6% of our standing floor space in elementary schools, we would save enough to save about a little bit more than 100 current classroom teaching positions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Bagley. I had something to say that's not precisely on this, but related. I have an anchor ride coming at 10, so I'm afraid that this will run over, and I won't have a chance to say it, so I'm going to try it now.
Is this on the topic that we're on?
Sort of.
Ma'am? Is it on this topic, the school budget?
It's related to it. Can I try it and you see whether it's okay?
Okay.
All right. I'm concerned about our children's health and their longevity. And I know it's kind of related to this budget because they're under assault and trying to manage to keep it together. And what I would like to talk about is possibly could cost more money, but I believe it could be done without it. We have an epidemic of skin cancer worldwide, and we have it worse here than anywhere else in the world except for Australia and New Zealand, because we have a hole in the ozone layer that passes directly over us. We have our children outside at noon during maximum exposure to this, and excuse me, this is going to shorten their lifespan and cause them to have a really high incidence of skin cancer. I would like for us to start addressing this problem and protecting those children. One of the things that I thought we could do that won't cost any extra money would be to go and have a shorter recess at noon and have longer ones on the early recess and the later recess, so that the children will have less exposure. And the other thing I wanted to try is see if we can keep them indoors more. I know that's very difficult, and I'm afraid that that would cost budget things, but I would like for us to start dealing with this so that we don't wind up with a huge incidence of skin cancer here. In Australia, they require children to wear long sleeves and long pants and hats and sunglasses to go to school. And we aren't doing that here, and we have equal exposure to their children there. So we should be doing this here also, and that wouldn't even cost any money. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Hall, Assembly members, Mayor Sullivan, for the record. I'm David Boyle, representing myself. In the Anchorage School District, about 88% of the operating budget goes toward salaries and benefits. And this is a major factor, of course, in controlling cost. So let's look at recent action by the Anchorage School District School Board. They just approved a contract for the teachers union. By the way, in the AEA teachers union, there are no more than about 60% are teachers. The rest are ancillary personnel. In that contract, just recently approved last fall, there's a 1% salary increase for each of the 3 years of the contract. There's a $1,500 bonus for year 1 and year 3. And there's a step increase each year of duty. These both equate to a 5 to 7% pay increase for years 1 and 3 for an employee with less than 10 years of service. As another portion of the teacher's contract, the district pays the NEA Alaska Health Trust Fund, now known as the Public Education Health Trust Fund, for those members who do not enroll. Repeat, those members who do not enroll in the health insurance. This is about 500 members at a cost of about $18,000 per member for a total of $9 million. The district could have saved this $9 million by negotiating much harder. I would like to now read some notes from the March 16, 2010 meeting of the municipality and the Anchorage School District Working Group. These notes are from the ASD Budget Advisory Commission. 3 notes. Recommend the district encourage more charter schools due to lower operating cost and higher demand from the public. Recommend contracting out some support services, such as custodial services, especially those the 24 floating custodians. And number 3, recommend the district repurpose, repeat, repurpose some of the schools, neighborhood schools, to free up space for charter schools. So tonight, I recommend you reduce the Anchorage School District budget overall by $10 million. That amount saved by repurposing neighborhood schools into charter schools. By the way, a member of this committee is the current school board president. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Richard Braun. I'm getting ready to start, Paul, so shut that off. I'm a citizen here and a grandparent with kids in the system, and I'm concerned about the school system. I also miss Gretchen. I think we got a lot better information and a little better work effort to compile a budget in the past. I recommend that you vote no on this budget and send it back for some revision. This budget maintains kind of the status quo rather than good budgeting or using good budgeting techniques. The techniques I think used for this budget are like the old song goes, wishing and hoping and praying. Not very sound techniques. They're building a bit of a house of cards that I don't think is going to stand up under the long term. Listening to the school board, there wasn't much discussion on next year and the year after, which is a bigger problem than this year. I don't think they're being proactive enough. We do have an MBA member and a professional nonprofit allocator on the school board. But despite that, there seemed to be the solution at the end of the meeting was, let's rob the budget reserve and get by one more year. Trouble is, there's an inconvenient board policy against decreasing the budget reserve below a certain level, but they fixed that by just waiving the policy and said, well, we'll go a couple tenths of % below, everything will work out. Well, we're wishing and hoping and praying it works out. How they're going to do next 2 years with that technique, I do not know. They also catered to the whim of a board member who just desired that a few positions be reinstated, and they did it without a whole lot of discussion. That's not a very good technique either for budgeting. They're avoiding hard decisions by spending reserves rather than doing the right thing. And they're hoping the tooth fairy down at Juneau is going to shower them with a bag full of money, I guess. My question is, what if that doesn't happen? We also are doing a $400, I think, square foot rehab of a school, which is questionable. And I think maybe it's in the hopes it spins off a little extra cash like in the past, where I think the budget reserve kind of was formed a little bit with leftovers from past contracts. I guess it was a dependable source then, and they want it now. Send it back. They can do better.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all?
Hi,
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joey Eske, and I'm a Sand Lake resident and a mom of 3 children in the public school system. My children actually attend Aquarian Charter School in Spenard. Aquarian Charter School's enrollment is currently 383 students, although you may have heard we have a wait list of over 800. I am actually the chair of our school's academic policy committee. The committee is comprised of teachers and parents. The committee is responsible for establishing the school's budget and curriculum. Charter schools are a successful part of the public school system in Alaska. Unlike some areas in the lower 48, Alaska's charter schools are public schools, and we employ NEA union teachers. There are 6 facilities-based charter schools in Anchorage, ranging from Eagle River, where you have Eagle Academy, East Anchorage, they have Native Cultural Charter School, Winterberry, and Highland Tech. Mid-Anchorage, there's Rokashula, and in Spenard, there's Aquarian. As you may become aware through this budget process, there are numerous funding equity issues with charter schools. Apparently, this has been the situation for a long time. This is not something new. Charter school students in Anchorage currently receive the adjusted BSA, and that is it. We do not receive additional monies from the local tax contribution. We do not receive additional tax dollars all the time. Sometimes we do. And there are many federal dollars that we do not also receive. The cuts that the district is going through, charter schools have already incurred. We've already done that. We've cut all of our teachers that we can. We've cut our extra support staff. And we are struggling to pay for the basics, our rent, our facilities, et cetera, to educate our public school students. We, as a parent group, are actively working with the state legislators. We're actually actively working with the school district and the school board, and it's it's been a good relationship, and we would like to keep that. And we appreciate their efforts so far. The reason I'm reaching out to you is there are two areas that are kind of under your jurisdiction that we'd like you just to be aware of as we move through the process. The first area revolves around the local tax contribution. Currently, charter schools in the district receive 2% of the local tax contribution in its totality, although we have 5% of the population of students. This situation occurs in all school districts, and Mat-Su has recently actually rectified this situation and is now passing through all of the local contribution. So we just wanted to make you aware of that situation, that we are actively working on it and that we may come to you for support. The second area would be around property taxes. Some charter schools are actually in private facilities that they have contracted out and just been forced to be in a private relationship without space in the school district. And those schools are actually paying property taxes. Rilke Shule is trying to build, and they are going to pay $150,000, and Winterberry pays $50,000. So we just wanted to bring those issues to your attention and let you know that we are working on them. We are actively working with the school board and the school district, and that we appreciate their cooperation, but we also may need to come to you for our support. Please.
Mr. Honeman?
Thank you for the commentary.
Yes.
And I was reading through my research when people are up giving information. I'm trying to find
Absolutely.
research to vet and back. So Aquarian charter schools, all elementary grades?
Yes, it is K through 6.
Okay, K through 6, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Public school.
And then the ratio, pupil to student ratio is right in there with some of the elementary schools that they're rated around. I did hear, and perhaps it'll probably be a question to either Mr. Graff or Mr. Abbott here. I heard them saying earlier that they're reviewing that percentage, as you were talking about, of the local pass-through for the local contributions, the tax contribution. The concern I have is the latter part of your presentation, and that is on the taxable property. Now, my understanding from the state statute is education institution and religious institutions and nonprofits are exempt. So I'm a little confused as to.
So are we.
Rilke Shule, if I'm not mistaken, is in a religious institution.
Rilke Shule is looking to build, and one of their build decisions is that they're going to be working with a private contractor, and there's going to be the size of their building. They're projecting that they're going to incur property taxes of $150,000 per year if they follow through with this contract. So Winterberry is currently in a situation, and they're paying $50,000 a year.
Okay. Well, I'll do a little more research on that. I have heard that. I'm a little perplexed because I always thought that the education, I mean, we had the same argument with APU many years ago, and we were forced by the state, actually, when we had this dispute over how much money the building itself, it's on an education land, an education institution.
And we thought there might be some precedence to it. We're not sure, so we're hoping to come and work with you on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Flynn, you want to help us out?
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the reason Winterberry Charter School pays taxes, they don't actually pay taxes. They have they lease space from a private owner, and the private owner pays property taxes. You don't get an exemption based on who's in your building. You get an exemption based on who owns the building. And that's what Rilke Shule is facing. If they would use their fund stream to pay the lease for their new facility, the owner of the facility, a private citizen or private company, would then have to pay the property tax.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none, this is back before the body. Mr. Starr?
I'd like to move to continue the public hearing to the meeting of April 8th for action at that time.
Okay. Any objection? Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Mr. Starr, I think you mentioned earlier why you wanted to do that, but I'm wondering if the school district has any comments on postponing that. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if the school district has any issue with that, with postponing and have it. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, Ms. Gray-Jackson, thank you for the opportunity to comment. We came before you tonight with the hope of having the Assembly approve the budget as recommended by the administration and the school board. In terms of what the impact will be, I can't speak to that. We haven't done a legal review of what those timelines are associated with the budget approval, but We believe we have a very balanced budget. We believe we went through a process that will involve the community members and has certainly met our requirements of having 2 public comments available during the process. And so I think I will leave that up to the Assembly to make that determination tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up, not necessarily with, but with Mr. Starr, do you, I mean, I want everybody who wants to testify on anything before us to have that opportunity. So do you think we're going to have more folks out to testify? Hard question to answer, I know.
It is a little bit. You know, I think that we as a municipality side, when we approve our budget, we have two hearings, 2 expectations. I think there was even some on this body that felt that we had 2 on this one, although Mr. Graff suggested, of course, they meet the compliance because the school board has 2 public hearings as well. We've also had a lot of discussion about process and the ability for folks to speak to us. I didn't hear from one teacher tonight, but yet I get emails from them as well. And so the idea that we didn't hear, I believe, from everybody that perhaps would want to talk to us. And thirdly, there was some questions asked primarily about the 6-year fiscal plan and some of the other discussions. So I don't think it's a rush deal. I don't believe we actually have to get it done tonight in the can. Does it make sense and all that? You know, I could go either way with it, but I'd really like to make the recommendation that we talk about April 8th. You know, if I can speak to the matter about the election, I'm up for re-election as well. And I think the idea that it potentially become an item in the next week on what happened, that's the danger of an item. We face that on every agenda, but we've been doing a fair job of pushing things off that we can till after April 1st. I don't typically temper my discussion points, but by the same token, we've got a week to go before the voters weigh in. So I think we leave that to them to weigh in, and then we do afterwards.
If I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your honesty, Mr. Starr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Honeman?
I certainly would encourage this body to encourage more public participation and public testimony. So I'm not against that at all, Mr. Starr, by any means. I don't know in this particular matter if we're going to gain any different budget numbers by having another public hearing. So I'm a little concerned because, you know, if we were looking at the difference of being able to jockey around other funding sources or something, that the school district might be in a better position to, as you say, put more teachers back in the classroom in your area, local schools, perhaps mine. So I'm a little perplexed. I know that the school board did their job. It's a tough one because they're facing such a huge deficit, and so much of what's going to happen really for the coming year is going to rest into the hands of the state legislature, and obviously if it passes the governor's pen. So I'm willing to have another meeting. We're not, as you say, rushed by charter. We don't have to approve it tonight. So I guess I'd encourage, if we're going to do this, and it looks like we may, that, you know, we encourage the public to ring in with their comments or actually come to next Assembly. The Pledge of Allegiance sure sounds good, but I'd sure like to hear a lot more persons talking about their concerns about their schools and what we at the local tax levels can be doing for impacting. So thank you, Mr. Starr, for the conversation.
Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will speak in favor of postponement. I personally was not completely satisfied, and I'd like the opportunity to follow up with Mr. Foster and discuss some of their outlying years and their financial outlook, because I think that's a big part of the puzzle. And I know this body has requested that a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and it hasn't been presented. So I would like to follow up on the 6-year fiscal plan. I'd also like to follow up on the pre-K issue, just to understand the funding stream a little bit more on the federal side. So for me, it would be beneficial, and it's a big budget. I'm not, you know, if I had to vote tonight, I think I might have a different vote if I have more information. So I'd like that opportunity.
Mr. Steele?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. What we offer here is a yes or no vote in terms of the upper limit that's proposed. Unless we're going to do some effort to try to change the resources, or, you know, we had a work session. We just had a meeting with the board, and it seems to me we have had plenty of opportunity to discuss and ask questions. So I don't really understand the intent unless there's an opportunity through a work session or through some review of our budget to see if there's something that we can do to help the school district. Otherwise, we're just putting it off for no reason.
Mr. Starr?
Well, I'd also guide you that we're proposing to cut a couple hundred teachers, Mr. Steele, and I'm not ready to go on that yet. I'm not here to challenge you. Yes, we are. We fund them. Ms. Johnson's not here as well. She offers quite a bit of dialogue from her history on the body, as well as she's down in Juneau for matters that probably have an impact on this very budget and the spending plan. I don't think it's too much to ask for that from the public's dialogue and the public's discussion. I'm prepared. I can certainly be that way, but again, I've been talked to and talked about for Russian public process in the process tonight. I'm not ready. We had a work session on Friday. There's still discussion points that are out there. I just want to give it just cause and let everyone get focused after April 1. Thank you.
Please vote on the motion to postpone. Yes. Continue public testimony. Yes. That motion passes 7-3 with one absent. Mr. Starr, we're going to now have before us item 9E1, which you asked to reorder the agenda. So we have before us 9E1, subject to the Anchorage School District 6-year capital improvement plan, July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2020. Mr. Starr.
Well, I guess sort of the same concept applies to this one for slightly different reasons, and it's not open for public hearing. But again, the premise that the bonds and the action on the bonds, there's 2 points to my discussion. Mr. Trainee? There's 2 points to my discussion and pushing it off to April 1st. Again, I don't want to do anything on the microphone tonight that would sway or dissuade folks from voting on their conscience on the bonds next week. And I think we run the risk of speaking in clarity, perhaps even in confusion that would impact the bond discussions as it relates to the voters. I don't want to do that. The first year of this plan is affected by those bonds. What we hear from the voters on April 1st, we'll have some discussion on this plan. So it's merely for acceptance. I think we can also tie it in for a discussion on April 8th and do a better job of talking about the future of our school construction and future improvements. So again, move to postpone acceptance of the report until April 8th.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Please vote. Please vote. That motion passes 10 in favor, 1 absent. We now have before us item 14C, AO number 41, an ordinance approving annexation of properties within Loma Estate Subdivision, Block 1, Lot 6A, Block 1, Lot 7A, Block 1, Lot 8, Block 2, Lot 1, Block 2.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us for action.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Honeman?
I'm sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button.
Okay. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Motion passes 10 in favor, 1 absent. We now have before us item 14D, AR number 64, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $250,000 in the form of a reimbursable grant from the Anchorage Soil and Water Conservation District Division of the State of Alaska Natural Resource Department to the Parks and Recreation Department, Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Service Area Capital Project Fund 461 for the purpose of funding the development of the Abbott Loop Community Park Playground. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Items before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Please vote. That motion passes 10 in favor with 1 absent. We now have before us item 14E, AR number 65, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $67,324 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231 and $172,894 to the Public Transportation Capital Fund 485, all as an Alaskan Community Transit reimbursable grant when tendered from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities, and appropriating $1,481 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231 and $3,458 to the Public Transportation Capital Fund 485 as contributions from the 2014 operating budget area-wide General Fund 101 in support of said grant, all within the Public Transportation Department. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Items before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I don't see Lance here. Oh, I have a question. In years past, we actually used the words, I think, dial-a-ride and some of the other transit. Is this still the primary focus of how we expanded the fleet that has 13 or 15 folks in the Chugiak Eagle River area? Is this the grant?
In part, yes, it is.
Okay. I got a call from a gentleman that indicated that, and I don't know the bus route, that probably comes down Muldoon and then serves to Hot New Commons in that area.
Right.
Now they're saying that that bus doesn't continue into the mall itself. It stops outside of that, either does a UE at the school there, Bartlett or something. What do I tell the folks on that may not be in the category of this, but need to get to the mall and they can't walk a mile to get around the block there? How can we maybe use some of these funds to do that, or what's your focus on this?
Okay, through the chair, Mr. Starr, the Takotnu Commons, we changed the service in last August. Instead of driving all the way into the mall and turn around and coming all the way back, we were spending almost 3 hours a day just going in and out of the parking lot. And so we moved our service out to Muldoon, and we basically stage at the VA, where we have a lot of service at the VA as well. I've been talking to the owners of the development to see if they would be willing to run their own shuttle or their vehicle inside the mall to get them out. I haven't had a response back, but we wouldn't be dedicating a vehicle for private businesses to run folks from their business out to the street, but we are working with them to figure out another solution.
Well, my reason for bringing it up is this is an alternative. They can certainly call for dedicated service to get them into the mall. Would your services do that then?
Absolutely. They could call that kind of service. We could be for a variety of places, absolutely. If they qualify for that type of a service, then, they can certainly give us a call.
And just for a second, I know it's still an early night. Can you tell us how they do that? Can they call the day before? Is it an online registration? What is that now?
Yes, so the service is actually, the service that you're referring to, our Paratransit or Anchor Ride service, is run by a contractor, and so they will schedule the service in advance, and then we will pick them up wherever they determine, and then we drop them off. And so, but they can call our customer service, 6543, to get them started, or they can call me, and we'll get them directed.
Okay. All right, and you're seeing this grant appropriation kind of feeds that
Yes,
program
actually,
overall?
the $67,000 is part of the contribution of the contractor to provide
Okay.
those types of services.
Great. Thanks for knowing your business, Lance. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, Lance, to follow up on the Takanu Commons, also have some constituents with concerns. We still have a bus shelter in place, do we not, in Takanu Commons?
We do, as a matter of fact, though, but we don't own it. But we've made the owner of the Takanu Commons actually bought that shelter. They bought the style that we have, but we don't own it. So I've been in contact with them to see if they would be willing if we could buy it from them. And again, I haven't heard back from them. So what we would do with the shelter is our plans are to put a shelter actually out on Muldoon. So folks can have some protection, wait for the bus out there.
I would be interested. I mean, I've long espoused, for lack of better terms, a private-public partnership with shuttle services to feed the main routes so that the buses aren't driving through and getting stuck at lights and inside pickups behind a bunch of cars in a mall, which is problematic, I know, but we stop at Providence Hospital inside their parking lot. We stop, am I right here? We do have several places we stop inside mall parking lots already, don't we?
Actually, the only parking lots we go into now are at Providence, and we're probably going to move out of there and the Diamond Center, but we're making improvements because we have roads that go through the area at Diamond.
Right, and I think that was the model that I was looking at Tahadnu Commons. The east side is kind of a lot more like Diamond, and I can't see a way to fix it to make it look like Diamonds, where they have a dedicated route and road. Am I right?
That's true, and we've worked with, Takatnu was very cooperative early when the development was just getting underway and the service going in and out was workable, but as it has expanded and they really have eight stop signs going in and going out, and we lose a lot of service just fighting traffic, getting in and out of there. So every situation is a little bit different, but we'll continue to reach out to the folks at Takatnu, see if we can't get a shuttle, and obviously we're very interested in getting the shelter.
If it's possible, if you just either feed me the route schedule so I can see how often or how frequent a shuttle would have to get people to your bus service out in that area, I appreciate it.
You bet.
Mr. Starr, you have a follow-up?
I do, and I drove it the other day to see what my it's who it is as well. If there's another entrance to Tahadnu that people don't recognize, it's right before the gate entrance to the base, the military base, and you drop everybody off at Lowe's. But if they would do their U-turn around there, at least they get them onto the heated sidewalk network at Tahadnu Commons. Would Lowe's like everybody to be dropped off in front of their building? Probably not, but please continue to work with us on that. I just don't want to overload this system. We did it before in years past, and there wasn't enough money to go around to the routes because everybody was calling for dedicated service, and then that was the other challenge we faced. So, again, thank you, Lance, for being engaged.
You bet.
Thanks, Lance.
You bet.
Please vote. Mr. Steele? Thank you. That motion carries 10 in favor with 1 absent. We now have before us item 14F, AR number 66, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $2,200,000 as a contribution from the 2014 Equipment Maintenance Internal Service Operating Fund 601 unrestricted net access accounts to the Equipment Maintenance Internal Service Capital Fund 606 Public Works Department to purchase replacement vehicles and equipment. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed.
Move to approve.
Before the body. Please vote. That motion passes 10 in favor with 1 absent. We now have before us item 14G, AO number 67, a resolution Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $650,000 from the Anchorage School District Memorandum of Agreement with Municipal of Anchorage to the Anchorage Roads and Drainage Service Area CIP Fund 441 for the Bowman Elementary School pedestrian improvements to the Public Works Department. Item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Please vote. That motion passes 10 in favor with 1 absent. We now have before us item 14H, AR number 68, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $589,963 as a contribution from the 2014. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Please vote. That item passed 10 in favor with 1 absent. We now have before us item 14J, AR number 70. 14I, turn one too many pages. We have before us item 14I, AR number 69, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $340,000 contribution from the 2014 Public Works Department. Thank you. Item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Honeman?
Well, just a real quick question. I'm noting that, of course, this was a 2009 bond. Are we just appropriating the money, Ms. Mahoney, into the reserve fund, or are we just getting around to getting the bond funded? I'm a little confused on how that works. Because I know we had this appropriation that we were discussing earlier in the year about, or late last year, about the funding coming from the legislature from last session.
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, what this is in basically between 2006, 2008, we replaced roofs on several key buildings in the city, and at that time the administration and the assembly voted, rather than the large capital outlays every time we need a roof, they set up a reserve fund, and this is an annual installment of that fund that goes into a reserve fund to replace roofs in the future on these 3 buildings.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Dembowski?
Oh, great. I'm glad you're at the microphone now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed that the Sullivan was in here, and since it's in here, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask, since we appropriated money in the Project 80s for the fix on the Sullivan roof, do we have that scheduled? Do you know when that's going to be completed?
The roof portion will probably be done next summer.
Next summer.
Yeah, and it's only one little portion of the east side. The rest of the main roof was done, which is identified here. The main roof was completed. There's several small areas that were not done in the original big roof, and that's what's going to be done next
With
summer.
the Project 80s money?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's what's identified.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please vote. That motion carries 10 in favor, 1 absent. We now have before us item 14J, AR number 70, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $181,100 as a contribution from the area-wide General Fund 101 Real Estate Services 2014 operating budget to the area-wide Capital Fund 401 Real Estate Department Real Estate Services for City Hall capital maintenance and improvements of $106,100 in tenant improvements and $75,000. This item is before the body for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
I should know this because I've been here for a while. Ms. Gray Jackson, maybe you can answer it. Are we approving this on the public hearing budget only because of the amount? For example, the large upgrade to City Hall that was the boiler upgrade to that was on the consent agenda. Why do some of them appear on the consent agenda and some of them appear through the public hearing budget?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, since you asked me, not that I know everything because I don't, but I will tell you the code requires anything over $100,000 has to have a public hearing. So the number is key. And if the administration has anything else to say, I welcome you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The administration have a comment?
Through the chair, LV is correct.
Thank you.
You should record that,
I guess how much was the boiler improvement that we did earlier to City Hall? Okay, and we just gave them. I thought it was $860-some thousand that we did on the consent agenda.
Through the chair.
Yes.
This is Tammy Oswald. What you're approving now is actually the appropriation. The AM that was on the consent agenda was actually what we were spending it on.
So the earlier item didn't appropriate it, so it's not like we're.
It had previously been appropriated, and then the AM just identifying how it was spent.
All right, I don't want to waste everybody's time on it. It's just back to that discussion of how much money we poured in City Hall before we should have bought it. You know.
Please vote. That motion carries 10 in favor, 1 person absent. We now have before us item 14K, AO number 14, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 1.15, to prohibit the acceptance of lobbyist fundraising when the lobbyists are registered for municipal work and in candidates are municipal elected officials or municipal employees. This item is before the body for public testimony.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Had a request from the Ethics Board that we need to postpone this one to the 22nd of April so they can meet on it.
Let me finish the public testimony.
I know, my motion is going to be to postpone.
Understood.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone to testify? Okay. Items back before the body, Mr. Trainee.
Move to extend this to the meeting of the 22nd of April, sir. That we will hear back from the Ethics Commission.
Second.
Any objection from the body? Yes, Mr. Starr.
Did we just close the public hearing?
No.
Okay, so if you move an S version back to our new law, then we've got the S
Then
version.
we'd have to have the public hearing.
All right, thank you very much.
Correct.
Mr. Hall, that would be a motion to continue. We're going to continue the public hearing.
Yes.
Yes. I'm making a great effort to, any time that I'm closing public testimony, to say it, and if not, I'm just stating it's back before the body.
How's your tooth doing, Mr. Chairman?
No.
How's your mouth doing?
Good.
Okay.
We now have before us item 14A, AO number 38, an ordinance amending Anchorage. 11A, I'm sorry, 11A, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 28.60.050, votes in absentee ballot by mail to allow public disclosure of absentee mailing addresses. And Ms. Dembowski, you had the floor when we reordered the agenda.
Thank you, sir. And just for clarity, I think there was already a motion to approve in a second.
That's correct.
Okay. I'd like to move, I just passed out a floor amendment. I'd like to move that amendment now.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. This amendment, it clearly says in Section A, the application shall include a place for the voter to keep private the address to which the absentee ballot is to be mailed. Chapter 3.90, notwithstanding, if the voter chooses to keep private the address to which the absentee ballot is to be mailed, only the name and residence address of the voter is public record. And then in Section 2, it'll make this ordinance effective 45 days after passage and approval by the Assembly. So essentially what this does, this will give the opportunity to opt out and to keep your information private, but what it'll also do is it'll mimic state law. So currently this is how the state, you can opt out and keep things private in the state. That's what I've been told. And I was just trying to find parity and address Mr. Trainee's concerns about, number one, impacting this election, but number two, keeping people's information private. So that's the intent of this amendment.
Second.
Who? Mr. Birch? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
And I would support that, Mr. Chairman. I believe that it, as indicated, it does track state law, and it does preserve the option for those that would want to, for one reason or another, exclude themselves to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a motion to substitute. This is the opt-in option. I've got copies for everybody.
They got sent down, I think.
instead of the opt-out, this is the opt-in. We'd have to mark on the ballot, on the form that you want made.
Are you going to second it?
Second.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. Honeman?
I think he moved it, I seconded it. I was going to comment on that. On both, actually.
The clerk has that.
Okay. And so to address both in Amy's motion and Mr. Trainey's motion, Mr. Bosky and Mr. Trainey.
Point of order. Mr. Chairman, if there's a motion on the floor, don't you have to deal with that motion first?
The motion was the move to substitute, and so
And that's dealt with
that
first.
takes precedence over the underlying.
Just checking.
Okay, so continuing, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Bosky and Mr. Trainey, I much prefer the opt-in versus opt-out, and the reasoning is that a lot of folks who may, like myself, I voted advance early voting here at the library, and I haven't done that in decades, and so it took a while for me to look over that form to try to determine which blocks, and they were very busy that day, and so there wasn't a whole lot of help until you get to the table. So I see there's a whole lot of room for perhaps missing something that you really intended, and I think in the interest of protection of, as was stated earlier, I think choosing to opt in is better than having to assertively opting out. So I think I'd much prefer, no offense, Mr. Bosky, I'd much prefer the opt-in versus opt-out. Thank you.
People to speak on the motion to substitute, because I've got a group of names that were here before. Mr. Trainey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got this because, like I said, I talked to people from Awake who wouldn't have been tracked down by their abusive spouse or wanted to be spouse, and they asked me to make sure we don't release this information. I'm going to honor that by bringing this in front of the body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Honeman, I do not take offense at all. I appreciate your comments very much. I think both Mr. Trainey and I have both, I think both amendments would probably accomplish the same goal. Anytime I have an opportunity to create parity between city law and state law, I try to do that. In this particular instance, I think we have the reversal. So I prefer the amendment that I moved, but I do appreciate the spirit because I think both amendments would create privacy opportunities for the residents. So thank you very much.
Anyone else to speak on the motion to substitute? Seeing none, please vote on that motion. It's a no vote. It's a tie vote. We're back to Ms. Dembowski's amendment. Anyone to speak on that amendment? Please vote. That motion passes 7 in favor, 3 opposed, and 1 absent.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move and ask for immediate reconsider.
We've got to vote on the motion as amended.
Thank you. Yeah.
Please vote on the motion as amended. Okay, Mr. Starr.
We're speaking to the main motion right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Madam Clerk, perhaps you can answer my question. I was asleep at school perhaps the day we changed code, or did we just get a legal opinion that changed the policy? I actively chase absentee ballots, so did we change code that prohibits you from giving us the address, or was it just a legal opinion that showed up?
Mr. Starr, that I'm going to let Mr. Wheeler answer that question. I think he can address it better than I am. I can. Obviously, this change happened before I was clerk, so I think Mr. Wheeler can answer that for you.
Okay.
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, the first time I looked at this issue was about 2 years ago, and I rendered a legal opinion to the municipal clerk at that time. When we started work on the Title 28 rewrite last spring, this is one of the issues we looked at. In fact, we discussed this issue at a work session, and there was some lively debate about whether or not to amend the code, because I had written in an amendment to protect the addresses. When the Assembly adopted the ordinance about a month and a half ago, it approved keeping the addresses confidential.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Please vote.
What?
No, I don't. No idea how we got that.
Okay, let me. Okay, let's. Do you want to reset and I'll do a different one?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Mr. Coleman, reset on vote. Okay.
Okay.
Is that the right motion now?
No,
Does
it's
it say-
Phil's motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone.
Then let me redo it, all right?
Okay.
Did you know I showed? Okay. Does that work?
Yes. Please vote. It still says motion to postpone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't really a motion to postpone, is it?
No. The clerk has been challenged to get that off the screen, but she's trying.
Okay, let me try one more time, all right? There you go.
Motion to approve. Okay, please vote. Mr. Steele? Ms. Gray Jackson? That motion passes 6-4 with one absent.
Mr. Chairman, I move for immediate reconsideration and urge a no vote.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second for immediate reconsideration, urging a no vote. Who are we missing? The motion for reconsideration fails 5-5. This completes our agenda. We are now down to audience participation. Anyone from the audience wish to testify? Anyone at all? Tom does.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly. My name is Tom McGrath. It reminded me when Mr. Wilbur was up earlier and he was talking about they don't have the resources to take the bus into Tottenham Common, even though probably a lot of people on the bus need to go shopping and they have no other way to do that. When Mr. Mayor Begich was the mayor of Anchorage, he wrote in a letter on a given day about 10 years ago that from that day forward, all municipal employees could ride the bus for free. And I've asked the CFO about what that costs, and it's about $38,000 a year. And it's never been put in code. You've never taken an action on it. A mayor in the past has given away $38,000 per year on his say-so, and you guys have never taken action on it. Yet we don't have enough money to run the bus into a place where thousands and thousands of people shop every day. I think we have a problem. You know, municipal employees, if you can believe the computer printouts that are out there, make a lot of money. And I bet that a lot of the people that ride the buses in this town don't make that much money. So if we can give free bus rides to municipal employees without any action of the municipal assembly, then I think that we have a serious problem in this town. And I think it should be corrected. If you give the bus rides for free to municipal employees, then have the guts to do it from your position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Yvonne Bagley. I wanted to talk about the public transit. It's difficult to go and manage to participate in the political process adequately if you ride the bus or take anchor rides. In anchor rides, you aren't given any priority to be able to get to assembly meetings, for example. And the assembly meetings I've attended before have been kind of contentious, and they run late. And the latest time I could get for anchor rides today was 10 o'clock. And the contentious meetings I've been to before ran way over that. So I had to leave before I could say anything, and I couldn't see what even happened at the end of the meeting. And, excuse me, this has come up for other things. I've been trying to go to transportation meetings, and I've tried to get to 2 of them, and they've both disappeared and not been held at the time that was posted. Excuse me. I think that some kind of provision should be made so that we can have some kind of transportation to get us home if we want to come to one of these meetings that runs late. I would also like to mention that Alaska needs to do some serious thinking about food. We only have about 3 days worth of food in the whole state, above what we have right on our shelves at home right now. And right now, the federal government is cutting all kinds of things, as you've noticed. And we're getting subsidies, a lot of them not even obvious ones, that keep our costs down for getting food here from 2,000 miles away or more. And Alaska used to raise half of its food. We have a larger population now, but we also have the ability to do hydroponics. And we aren't really doing much to make sure that we have food here in this state. When the federal government quits helping make it easier for us to get that food here at a cost we can afford, we are not going to be able to keep eating if we don't start working on this and do it pretty soon. I talked to some people who work for oil companies, and they're already having to pump extra to keep the gas flowing through our pipelines. And they're also cutting staff for the same reason, because we are already starting to run out of oil, and our state is really dependent financially on oil. So that's part of our money for getting our food here that we can afford. We need to work on this. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Phil Isley, and the last month or so I've been hanging out with you guys, and we've been talking about lots of different things. And one of the things that we've addressed is that we're going to have revenue problems in the future. And the other night, every one of you expressed a concern about more housing and room for housing. And the mayor override your veto of a park. And the reason I bring this up, because I think when the initial deal was made, that one of the 3 lots in that park system was going to be sold off for commercial use to bring us revenue. So why would we include it back into the park when we know we need revenue and we know we need a place for housing? And it's just a question I have that I would like to bring up to you at this time, and you'll probably see it again.
Mr. Starr?
Mr. Isley, I wanted to just comment on why you get that blank stare from us when you made mention of it yesterday. And it's a protocol. I've been up here now for over 6.5 years, and we don't want to debate sort of the testifier with that, as well as it isn't a two-way exchange of information, unfortunately. That's sort of how we're designed. So I know you're looking for an answer again from us from that conversation, but that's not what this mechanism is, nor is public testimony set up for that engagement of just general debate back and forth. So the idea that you ask us a question and I know the answer, we perhaps know the answer, but we don't talk about it that way. That's odd and uncomfortable, I think, for all of us to have that moment of silence like you're ignoring me. So I appreciated you raising that conversational piece yesterday in one of the forums we were at, and I think it's something that we do need to talk about, our protocols and our discussion points. You just did it again now, and I think it's a lively discussion point, but even this exchange is a little bit over the protocols that were developed on this body way before me. So that's the answer that you should have gotten yesterday when you raised it, and I'm giving it to you again now. Thank you.
I'll keep asking questions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll be brief here. I hear a lot of the commercials coming on TV because the election season is around, and I think of my buddy Adam up there that used to play basketball on the same court together, if you can believe that or not. But I've taken public transportation now for between 4 to 5 years, and I don't drink and drive. We all know that, but I didn't learn my lesson quick enough. But the reason I bring this up is I know it's not the favorite topic for a lot of people up there, and there's a lot of cars in this town that have one person in them. We are becoming a major city, and I always believe that there's no better place than Anchorage to live. I love getting out of here, but you know, every time I land on the ground, I'm so glad I'm back on Alaska ground. And the reason that I bring this up to your attention tonight is I attend these public meetings that are posted on the People Mover buses. And oftentimes you get the people that, I don't know if we're targeting these people or that because we're state and federally funded, that these people are riding. I wasn't here earlier. I regret not being here a little bit earlier to hear the other side of this, but we have the possibilities, if these routes are structured properly, to have more of a ridership. And as far as helping the municipal people and helping people get a better understanding of the bus system, I'm all for that. They don't need to fund them for a very long period of time, but when you come into a situation where all these people in the meetings, they're being kind enough to be there, but I'm sure they're perhaps on a pay clock, but they are opening the schedules. They're not very much aware of the scheduling itself, and then they have this big view of what it can be, when the reality of it is I never seen any of them on the bus, but one single one of them, and that person's name is Jed, just for public record. And the rest of them, they were listening to what I had to say, just like now, because you're kind enough to listen. But I encourage all of you to realize the potential we have in this city. It's pretty simple. It's pretty much of a square. You know, you got Glen Highway, you got Muldoon, you got Tudor, and then you got Minnesota. They're renaming that now, the Hickle Highway. But my purpose for being here tonight is just to take it from this side, take it from the smaller meetings. Having those people in those meetings have a better sense of awareness instead of just getting up there and say, this is what we need to do, this is what needs to be done. they know what would be done, what would need to be done more if they were riding the buses. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, Mr. Wheeler, do you have, the clerk had a question in regards to the motion for reconsideration, a 5-5 vote?
Through the chair, the motion fails.
Okay, thank you. The chair will take a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.